Theodore Blackwood, CEO of a restaurant empire worth billions, decided on an undercover mission. He chose one of his diners and settled into a corner booth, hoping to observe unnoticed. A young, visibly nervous black waitress approached, her hands trembling slightly as she discreetly slid a folded note onto the table. Little did he know, this simple act would unravel a massive conspiracy, topple a criminal enterprise, and leave a powerful billionaire reeling from shock. Before diving into this incredible story, make sure to subscribe to our channel, give this video a thumbs up, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Your support allows us to bring you even more compelling narratives, and trust us, you won't want to miss what's coming. The morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Theodore Blackwood's Manhattan penthouse, illuminating a space that symbolized success but whispered of isolation. At 42, Theo had it all. A fortune that could rival small nations, restaurants dotting 3 continents, and a reputation that struck fear into competitors. Yet, as he sat at his mahogany desk, dressed in a charcoal Tom Ford suit, reviewing quarterly reports with his morning espresso, a profound loneliness weighed on him. Blackwood Hospitality Group, Chicago, location number 47, he muttered, his steel-gray eyes scanning the disappointing numbers. Revenue was down 18%, customer complaints had soared by 32%, and employee turnover was an alarming 67%. This particular location, a classic American diner he'd personally designed to honor his grandmother, was proving to be a financial and reputational disaster. Theo's jaw tightened as he read through the endless stream of complaints. Rude staff, cold food, dirty tables, an unwelcoming atmosphere. Each review felt like a personal attack. His grandmother, Eleanor Blackwood, had instilled in him the importance of hospitality, the belief that every guest should feel like family. She had worked tirelessly at a small diner in Queens to pay for his education, her hands stained with coffee and her heart filled with warmth for strangers. Teddy, he could almost hear her voice. A restaurant is about making people feel like they belong. He had built his empire on that very principle, but somewhere along the line, corporate agendas and profit margins had overshadowed personal connections. When was the last time he had actually visited one of his restaurants as anything other than a pre-announced inspector? His phone buzzed. Another text from his assistant reminding him about the charity gala that evening. Another night of forced smiles and shallow conversations with people who only saw his wealth. Theo stared at his reflection in the window, seeing a stranger in an expensive suit. Where was the passionate young man who had once dreamed of creating welcoming spaces for people? The Chicago location demanded answers, and Theodore Blackwood was determined to get them, even if it meant swapping his tailored suits for everyday clothes and his penthouse for a glimpse of the real world. 600 miles away, on Chicago's south side, Zara Williams was battling a different kind of struggle. Her small apartment on Cottage Grove Avenue was a far cry from Theo's luxurious penthouse, but it overflowed with something he lacked: love, laughter, and the unwavering spirit of a woman determined to define her own future. "Mama, I can't find my purple crayon," 6-year-old Amelia called from the kitchen table, her curls bouncing as she frantically searched through her art supplies. She wore a bright yellow dress that Zara had found at a thrift store and skillfully altered. Her brown eyes sparkled with the same intelligence that had helped Zara overcome every challenge life had thrown her way. "Check under your math homework, baby girl," Zara replied, her melodic voice carrying the warmth of someone who had learned to find joy in the simplest of moments. At 28, she possessed a natural beauty that no amount of exhaustion could diminish. Caramel skin that glowed despite the long hours, expressive dark eyes that missed nothing, and a smile that could light up even the darkest room. This morning, she wore her lucky red blouse and black slacks, the uniform that she hoped would help her get through another shift at Blackwood Diner. "Found it," Amelia squealed, holding up the crayon like a prized trophy. "Now I can finish my picture of us in our new house." Zara's heart ached. Their current apartment was clean but cramped, with thin walls that echoed every argument from neighboring units and windows that looked out onto a parking lot instead of the garden Amelia dreamed of. But it was theirs, and Zara had worked 3 jobs to keep it that way after Amelia's father disappeared when their daughter was 2. "Tell me about this new house," Zara said, sitting beside her daughter and gently stroking her curls. Amelia's face lit up. "It has a big kitchen where you can cook all your favorite recipes, and a yard where we can plant flowers, and my own room with purple walls and stars on the ceiling. That sounds perfect, sweetheart," Zara said, her voice catching slightly. If only Amelia knew how precarious their situation really was. The job at Blackwood Diner barely covered their expenses, especially with the looming rent increase next month. But Amelia didn't need to carry that burden. Zara glanced at the envelope on the counter, containing her carefully saved tips from the past month. Not nearly enough for Amelia's upcoming school field trip, let alone the security deposit for a better apartment. But it was progress, and Zara Williams had built her life on small victories. Her phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. "Happy to watch Amelia after school today. That child is a blessing. Mrs. Patterson is going to pick you up from school today," Zara told her daughter, helping her pack her backpack. "And remember our rule. Be kind, work hard, and never let anyone make me feel small," Amelia recited, her voice strong despite her young age. "That's my girl." Zara kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in the scent of the strawberry shampoo they'd splurged on last week. These morning moments were sacred, the calm before whatever storm awaited her at work. As they walked to the bus stop, Amelia's small hand tucked securely in hers, Zara tried to shake off the unease that had been growing for weeks. Something was wrong at the diner. Money was disappearing from the tip pool. Employees were being threatened for asking questions, and the district manager, Kevin Murphy, watched everything with cold eyes that made her skin crawl. Yesterday, when she had questioned why her paycheck was short again, Kevin had cornered her in the supply closet. His breath reeked of cigarettes as he whispered, "Careful, Zara. Single mothers in your situation can't afford to lose their jobs, especially when they have such pretty little daughters." The threat was clear, and it had kept her awake all night. But what choice did she have? She needed this job. Amelia needed stability, and going to the police meant risking everything when Kevin had connections throughout the city. "Mama, you okay?" Amelia's voice broke through her dark thoughts. Zara forced a bright smile. "Just thinking about how proud I am of you, baby girl." But as the bus approached, carrying them toward another uncertain day, Zara silently promised herself that somehow, someday, she would find a way to protect her daughter and expose the truth. She just had to be smart about it. What motivates people to take risks for strangers? Have you ever had a moment where a small act of courage changed everything? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of unexpected connections that transform lives. The autumn wind whipped through downtown Chicago as Theodore Blackwood stepped out of his rented Honda Civic. A far cry from his usual Bentley, he had traded his $1,000 suits for worn jeans, scuffed work boots, and a faded Northwestern University sweatshirt, clothes that would help him blend into the working-class neighborhood surrounding his restaurant. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was worth $2. $3 billion, pretending to be ordinary to understand why his own business was failing. Blackwood Diner stood on the corner of 53rd and State Street, its red brick exterior and classic neon sign exactly as he had envisioned 3 years ago. The lunch rush was in full swing, and through the large windows, he could see customers seated in the retro-style booths he had personally selected. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But Theodore had learned that appearances could be deceiving. He pushed open the glass door, a small bell announcing his arrival. The interior maintained the 1950s aesthetic he'd fought the design team to preserve. Checkered floors, red vinyl booths, and a long counter with chrome stools. Photos of Chicago's history lined the walls, and a vintage jukebox played Sinatra in the corner. It should have felt like stepping into his grandmother's memory. Instead, the atmosphere felt tense, almost hostile. "Sit wherever you want," a tired-looking hostess mumbled without looking up from her phone. Her name tag read Kelly, and her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore the restaurant's signature burgundy uniform, but it was wrinkled and stained. Theodore chose a booth near the window, positioning himself where he could observe the entire dining room. What he saw made his stomach churn. Servers moved with obvious reluctance, their fake smiles dropping the moment they turned away from customers. Tables sat dirty for long minutes before being cleared. And behind the counter, he caught glimpses of staff members huddled in what looked like worried conversations. This wasn't the warm, welcoming environment he dreamed of creating. Coffee? The voice was melodic despite its professional tone. Theodore looked up to find himself face to face with the most striking woman he had seen in years. She appeared to be in her late 20s, with caramel skin that seemed to glow despite the fluorescent lighting and dark eyes that held intelligence and something else. A weariness that spoke of hard-won wisdom. Her name tag read Zara. And she wore the burgundy uniform with a dignity that elevated the simple outfit. Unlike the other staff, her appearance was immaculate. Every detail perfect despite what he suspected were challenging circumstances. "Please," he replied, trying to keep his voice casual. "Black." Something flickered in her eyes, a flash of recognition so quick he almost missed it. But she simply nodded and moved away, her movements graceful and efficient. Theodore watched her work as she moved between tables. Unlike her colleagues, Zara treated every customer with genuine warmth. She remembered an elderly man's preference for extra cream, helped a young mother clean up her toddler's spilled juice without complaint, and somehow managed to smile authentically, even when dealing with a particularly rude businessman who snapped his fingers at her. When she returned with his coffee, Theodore was ready with his cover story. "Thanks," he said, affecting the casual tone of a construction worker on break. "Haven't been here before. Food any good?" "The apple pie is excellent," Zara replied, her voice carefully neutral. "My personal recommendation." She set the white ceramic mug in front of him, and that's when it happened. As she placed the coffee down, she smoothly slid a folded piece of paper underneath the saucer. The movement was so subtle, so perfectly executed that anyone watching would have seen nothing more than a waitress serving coffee. But her eyes met his for just a moment, and in that glance, Theodore saw fear, determination, and something that made his blood run cold: desperation. "I know who you are," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the diner's ambient noise. "They're going to destroy you." Theodore's hand froze halfway to the coffee cup. His heart hammered against his ribs as the implications crashed over him like a tsunami. She knew him, this waitress. This stranger had recognized him. Despite his careful disguise, Zara straightened, her professional mask sliding back into place. "Can I get you anything else to start?" Theodore's throat felt dry. "The pie? You mentioned pie. Coming right up." Her smile was perfectly normal, giving no indication of the bombshell she had just dropped. As she walked away, Theodore's mind raced. How had she recognized him? His photos rarely appeared in local media, and when they did, he was always in expensive suits with styled hair. Today, he looked like any other middle-aged man grabbing lunch. With trembling fingers, he carefully extracted the note from under his coffee cup, keeping it low and out of sight. The paper was small, torn from what looked like an order pad. The handwriting was neat, feminine, urgent. "They are stealing from you. Meet me Millennium Park tonight at 8 p.m. near the Crown Fountain. Come alone." Theodore read the note twice, his coffee growing cold as the weight of the words sank in. Kevin Murphy. He had hired Kevin 2 years ago based on glowing recommendations and impressive quarterly reports. The man had seemed professional, efficient, results-oriented. But if this note was true, Theodore folded the paper carefully and slipped it into his wallet, his mind already racing ahead to implications and solutions. But beneath the business analysis, something else stirred. A profound respect for the woman who had just risked everything to warn him. Zara returned with a slice of apple pie that looked homemade, the crust golden and flaky. "Our baker made this fresh this morning," she said, setting it down with the same careful precision she had used for the coffee. "Thank you," Theodore said, and this time he meant it for more than just the pie. She nodded once, a nearly imperceptible acknowledgement that his message had been received. Then she moved on to the next table, continuing her work as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Theodore forced himself to eat the pie, which was indeed excellent, while discreetly observing the restaurant with new eyes. Now he noticed the small things. Servers glancing nervously toward the back office. The way conversations stopped when a tall man in a suit emerged to survey the dining room. The tension that seemed to permeate the entire space. The man in the suit had to be Kevin Murphy. Mid-40s, silver hair, expensive watch, and an air of authority that felt more like intimidation than leadership. He moved through the restaurant like he owned it, his pale blue eyes missing nothing. When Kevin's gaze swept past Theodore's table, those eyes lingered for just a moment, long enough to make Theodore wonder if his disguise was as effective as he had hoped. 20 minutes later, Theodore paid his check and left, but not before catching one last glimpse of Zara. She was clearing a table near the window, and for just a moment, their eyes met again. In that brief connection, he saw the fear she had been hiding, but also something else. Hope. Walking back to his rental car, Theodore's mind churned with questions and possibilities. In the span of 30 minutes, a complete stranger had turned his world upside down. She had risked her job, possibly her safety, to warn him about corruption in his own company. Who was she? Why had she recognized him? And most importantly, was she telling the truth? As he drove away from the diner, Theodore made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Tonight, at 8 o'clock, he would find out exactly what Zara Williams was willing to risk everything to tell him. Behind him, through the restaurant's window, Zara watched the Honda Civic disappear into traffic. Her hands shook slightly as she cleared the last plates from his table, but her resolve was iron strong. She had crossed a line there was no coming back from. Whatever happened next, she had finally chosen courage over fear, for Amelia, for herself, and maybe, just maybe, for the man who might be their only hope for justice. Theodore sat in his rental car 3 blocks from the diner, hands gripping the steering wheel as his mind waged war with itself. The note felt like it was burning a hole through his wallet, each word echoing in his thoughts with increasing intensity. Kevin Murphy is stealing from you. Your people are in serious trouble. We're scared. Part of him, the successful businessman who had built an empire from nothing, wanted to dismiss this as the ramblings of a disgruntled employee. People made accusations all the time, usually when they weren't performing well themselves. Kevin's quarterly reports had been solid, his efficiency ratings high. The numbers didn't lie. But those eyes, Zara's eyes, had held something that couldn't be faked. Genuine terror mixed with desperate hope. Theodore pulled out his phone and scrolled to Kevin Murphy's contact information. His thumb hovered over the call button. The logical move would be to confront his district manager directly, demand explanations, get to the bottom of this immediately. Instead, he found himself thinking about the way Zara had whispered those words. They're going to destroy you. Not, he's going to destroy you. They, multiple people. A conspiracy. If Kevin was truly involved in something criminal, calling him now would be like announcing an investigation before it began. Evidence could disappear, witnesses could be silenced or threatened further. Theodore set the phone down and started the engine. He needed more information before making any moves. Meanwhile, back at Blackwood Diner, Zara's hands trembled as she refilled the coffee pot for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. The lunch rush was winding down, but her nervous energy made it impossible to stand still. Every time the back office door opened, her heart jumped. Every footstep behind her made her shoulders tense. What had she done? "You okay, honey?" asked Dorothy, the veteran waitress who had been working at the diner since before Theodore bought it. At 62, Dorothy had seen everything the restaurant industry could throw at someone, and she had developed a sixth sense for when her colleagues were struggling. "Fine," Zara replied automatically, but her voice came out an octave too high. Dorothy moved closer, pretending to organize napkin dispensers while keeping her voice low. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Did that customer give you trouble? The one in the northwestern sweatshirt?" Zara's blood ran cold. Had Dorothy noticed something? Had anyone else seen her pass the note? "No trouble," she managed. "Just tired." But Dorothy's weathered face showed concern. "Zara, baby, I've been doing this for 40 years. I know when someone's rattled. If you're having problems with money again, or if someone's bothering you. Dorothy, everything's fine? Zara interrupted, hating how sharp her voice sounded. Dorothy had been nothing but kind to her since she had started working here 18 months ago. But Zara couldn't risk involving her in this mess. The older woman's expression softened. All right, but you know where to find me if you need to talk. As Dorothy walked away, Zara felt a stab of guilt. She had been lying to everyone lately. To Dorothy, to her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who watched Amelia after school, even to her daughter when she asked why Mommy looked so worried all the time. The lies were necessary. Kevin Murphy had made that crystal clear 3 weeks ago when he had cornered her in the supply closet. You seem like a smart girl, Zara, he had said, his cologne overwhelming in the small space. Smart enough to know that some things are better left unobserved, unmentioned, forgotten. She had nodded, terrified, as his pale eyes bored into hers. Good, because accidents happen in this business. People lose their jobs. Sometimes they lose more than that. And it would be such a shame if something happened to that pretty little daughter of yours. The threat had been delivered in the same pleasant tone Kevin used when discussing menu changes with customers. But Zara had seen the steel beneath his smile, and she had known he wasn't bluffing. For 3 weeks, she had kept her mouth shut. She had watched Kevin and his cronies, assistant manager Brad Peterson and head cook Tony Romano, systematically steal from the restaurant and intimidate the staff. She had seen them skim cash from the registers, inflate vendor invoices, and pocket the difference. She had witnessed them sell prime steaks out the back door to their friends while marking them as spoiled in the inventory system. But today, when she had recognized Theodore Blackwood sitting in booth 7, something inside her had snapped. Maybe it was the irony of seeing the restaurant's actual owner being deceived in his own establishment. Maybe it was the memory of her father, who had taught her that silence in the face of injustice was complicity. Or maybe it was simply the desperate hope that someone with real power might finally be able to stop the nightmare that her workplace had become. Whatever the reason, she had acted on impulse, and now she was terrified. Zara. The voice behind her was calm, friendly, and absolutely terrifying. Zara turned to find Kevin Murphy standing 3 feet away, his silver hair perfectly styled despite the October humidity, his charcoal suit immaculate. Kevin, she replied, proud that her voice came out steady. How can I help you? Could you step into my office for a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss. It wasn't a request. Zara nodded and followed him toward the back of the restaurant, past the kitchen where Tony Romano was aggressively chopping vegetables, past the storage area where Brad Peterson was supposedly taking inventory. Kevin's office was small but well-appointed, with a mahogany desk that probably cost more than Zara made in 2 months. Sports memorabilia lined the walls. Signed footballs, framed jerseys, photos of Kevin with various Chicago athletes. The overall effect was meant to be impressive, but to Zara it felt like a cage. Kevin closed the door and gestured for her to sit in the chair across from his desk. He settled into his leather executive chair with the satisfied smile of a predator who had cornered his prey. You've been with us for 18 months now, he began conversationally. Excellent attendance, good customer reviews, no complaints, a model employee. Thank you, Zara said carefully. Which is why I was surprised to hear from Tony that you seemed agitated during the lunch rush. Distracted, making mistakes. Zara's heart pounded. She hadn't made any mistakes. She was always careful about that. But Tony Romano had been watching her, probably reporting back to Kevin about her behavior. I'm sorry if I seemed distracted, she said. I have a lot on my mind with my daughter starting a new school program. Yes. Amelia, 6 years old now, isn't she? Such a bright little girl. I saw her picture on your locker. Beautiful child. The way he said it made Zara's skin crawl. Kevin had no business knowing her daughter's name or age, and the fact that he had been looking at the photos in her locker felt like a violation. She is, Zara replied, keeping her voice neutral despite the rage building in her chest. Kevin leaned forward, his pale blue eyes never leaving her face. I hope she stays safe. Chicago can be such a dangerous city for children. All those busy streets, all those strangers who might not have her best interests at heart. The threat was barely veiled, but it was unmistakably there. Zara felt her resolve wavering. What was she thinking? Trying to take on someone like Kevin Murphy? He had money, connections, power. She was just a single mother trying to survive. But then she thought about the note currently sitting in Theodore Blackwood's wallet. She had already crossed the line. There was no going back now. "I understand your concern," she said quietly. "I'll make sure Amelia is always careful." Kevin studied her face for a long moment, clearly looking for signs of defiance or deception. Finally, he sat back in his chair. "Good. I'm glad we understand each other. Oh, and Zara, that customer you served today, the one in the Northwestern sweatshirt, did he say anything?" Zara's blood ran cold. Had Kevin detected something? She plastered on a confused expression, hoping to deflect his suspicions. Strange questions? No, not at all. He just ordered coffee and a slice of apple pie. Seemed curious about the diner itself, though. I figured he might be from the health department or a food critic observing things. Nothing unusual, really. Zara delivered the lie with practiced ease. "He seemed like any other customer to me." Kevin gave a slow, deliberate nod. "I'm sure you're right. You're very observant, Zara. I'm confident you'd mention anything noteworthy." The emphasis on that final word was unmistakable, a subtle threat that sent shivers down her spine. Kevin suspected something, even if he couldn't quite put his finger on it. It was a small advantage, but Zara knew it wouldn't last. "Is there anything else?" she asked, pushing back her chair. "Not at all. Thank you for your time." Zara left his office on shaky legs, Kevin's veiled threats echoing in her mind. Back in the diner, she felt Tony Romano's eyes on her, tracking her every move. Brad Peterson emerged from the storage room, a chilling smile twisting his lips. They were watching her, all of them, waiting for her to slip up, to give them the excuse they needed. But there was no turning back now. In 6 hours, she would either salvage Theodore Blackwood's business and protect her fellow employees, or she would face consequences too terrible to contemplate. As she mechanically cleared tables and refilled coffee cups, Zara found a strange sense of peace. She'd spent too much of her life living in fear of her ex-husband, fear of poverty, fear of taking risks. Tonight, for the first time in years, she was choosing courage, no matter the cost. 5 miles away, in a nondescript hotel room, Theodore Blackwood stared at Zara's hastily scribbled note, wrestling with his own doubts. In 3 hours, he would discover if his faith in a stranger was justified, or if he was walking into a carefully laid trap. The October air held a promise of winter as Theodore made his way through Millennium Park, his breath misting in the chilly 40-degree temperature. He'd swapped his Northwestern sweatshirt for dark jeans and a navy wool coat, aiming for approachable but inconspicuous. The park was bustling enough with evening joggers and tourists to provide a degree of anonymity for their meeting. As he approached the Crown Fountain, he found himself slowing down. Families were gathered, mesmerized by the LED faces projected onto the glass towers. His palms were sweating despite the cold. In 37 years of business, he'd negotiated multi-million-dollar acquisitions, faced hostile boardrooms, and built an empire from a single failing restaurant. But none of that had prepared him for this moment of agonizing uncertainty. What if it was all a setup? What if Zara was working with Kevin Murphy to lure him into a trap? What if she was simply a disgruntled employee seeking attention or money? But then he remembered their brief encounter that afternoon, the raw, palpable fear in her eyes. That kind of terror couldn't be faked. At precisely 7:58 p.m., he spotted her approaching from Michigan Avenue. She'd traded her diner uniform for dark leggings, brown boots, and an oversized burgundy sweater that made her look younger, more vulnerable. Her dark hair was pulled back in a high bun, and she moved with the quick, purposeful stride of someone accustomed to being efficient with her time. Their eyes met across the fountain, and Theodore felt an unexpected jolt, a recognition that went beyond her face, something deeper. She looked like someone carrying the weight of the world, a feeling he understood intimately. Zara approached cautiously, her dark eyes darting around the area before settling on his face. "You came," she said quietly. her voice barely audible over the fountain's gentle splashing. "I said I would," Theodore replied. "Though I'll admit, I wasn't sure what to expect. Walk with me." Zara gestured toward a less crowded path leading to the Lurie garden. "I don't want to be overheard." They fell into step, maintaining a careful distance as they moved away from the tourist throng. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken tension. Finally, Zara spoke. "I need you to know that I'm terrified right now," she confessed, her voice surprisingly steady. "If Kevin Murphy finds out I'm talking to you, I don't know what he'll do. But I can't watch this continue anymore." Theodore studied her profile as they walked. "What exactly is this?" Zara stopped abruptly, turning to face him. In the soft glow of the park's lighting, he could see the exhaustion etched around her eyes, the tension radiating from her shoulders. "They're stealing from you, Mr. Blackwood. Not just skimming the till or pocketing tips. I'm talking about systematic theft that's probably cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past 2 years." The use of his real name sent a chill down his spine. "How did you know who I was?" A small, fleeting smile touched Zara's lips. "You were on the cover of Chicago Business Weekly 3 months ago. The article was about your expansion into the Pacific Northwest. I read it while waiting at my daughter's pediatrician's office." "You read business magazines?" "I read everything I can get my hands on," Zara replied with quiet dignity. "Knowledge is the only thing nobody can take away from you." Her words struck Theodore with unexpected force. Here was a waitress, a single mother, who spent her free time educating herself, while he'd become so detached from his own business that criminal activity had flourished under his nose. "Tell me what you know," he said. Zara resumed walking, her hands buried deep in her sweater pockets. "It started small, maybe 2 years ago. Kevin would accidentally ring up meals for less, then pocket the difference. Or he'd mark premium ingredients as spoiled when they were perfectly fine, then sell them to his friends. Brad Peterson, the assistant manager, got involved about a year ago. Tony Romano, our head cook, joined them 6 months later." "What kind of amounts are we talking about?" "I estimate between $3,000 and $5,000 a week," Zara said quietly. "They've gotten bolder recently. Last month, Kevin created fake vendor invoices for kitchen equipment that was never delivered. The invoices went to companies owned by his brother-in-law in Naperville." Theodore felt his jaw clench. The Blackwood Diner on North Clark Street had been underperforming for 2 years, showing declining profits despite steady customer traffic. He'd attributed it to increased competition and rising food costs. Instead, his own employees had been systematically robbing him blind. "Why didn't you report this to the police? To corporate?" Zara's laugh was bitter. "You mean the corporate number that routes directly to Kevin Murphy's office? As for the police..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. 3 weeks ago, Kevin pulled me aside after my shift. He told me that employees who observed too much sometimes had accidents. Sometimes their families had accidents. The casual delivery of the threat made Theodore's blood run cold. "He threatened your daughter by name?" Zara confirmed, her voice hardening. "He knows where we live, where she goes to school, even which aftercare program she attends. He made it very clear that keeping quiet was the only way to keep her safe." They had reached a more secluded area of the park, surrounded by tall grasses and prairie flowers rustling in the evening breeze. Theodore stopped walking and turned to face Zara directly. "If you were too scared to report this before, why are you telling me now? What changed?" Zara met his gaze, unwavering. "Because I realized that staying silent wasn't protecting my daughter. It was teaching her that injustice should be tolerated. My father died when I was 16. But before he passed, he told me something I've never forgotten. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." Her voice caught slightly on the word father, and Theodore saw a fleeting glimpse of the pain she carried beneath her composed exterior. "He was a security guard at a factory in Cicero," she continued. "When he discovered that the foreman was cutting corners on safety protocols to save money, he reported it to OSHA. The foreman was fired. The safety violations were corrected. And 3 months later, my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. completely unrelated, but he always said that doing the right thing gave him peace. During his final months, Theodore found himself genuinely moved by her story. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. But my point is, I can't live with myself knowing that Kevin and his friends are not only stealing from you, but creating a toxic environment where good people are afraid to come to work. Dorothy, she's our senior waitress. She's been having panic attacks because Kevin screams at the staff when customers can't hear. Louise, one of our line cooks, asked Kevin if he could have Sundays off to take his elderly mother to church. Kevin cut his hours in half and told him that family time was a luxury he couldn't afford. With each example, Theodore felt his anger building. These weren't just financial crimes. They were crimes against human dignity. What do you need from me? He asked. Evidence, Zara replied immediately. Kevin's too smart to leave obvious traces. But there are patterns, financial discrepancies, inventory irregularities, vendor relationships that don't make sense. I've been keeping track as much as I can without arousing suspicion. She reached into her sweater pocket and produced a small notebook, its pages filled with neat handwriting, dates, amounts, descriptions of what she'd witnessed. It's not comprehensive, but it's a start. Theodore accepted the notebook, flipping through pages of meticulous documentation. Zara had recorded everything from suspicious cash transactions to overheard phone conversations. The level of detail was impressive, heartbreaking. She'd been building a case against her tormentors while living in fear for her safety. This is remarkable, he said honestly. But gathering evidence is dangerous work. If they suspect you're documenting their activities. They already suspect something, Zara admitted. Kevin questioned me about you today. He knows I served you, and he's wondering if you were asking unusual questions, or if I noticed anything strange about your behavior. What did you tell him? That you seemed like a regular customer. But I don't think he believed me completely. Tony Romano has been watching me more closely lately, and Brad Peterson has started, accidentally, bumping into me when I'm trying to work. They're trying to intimidate me. Theodore felt a surge of protective anger, surprising him with its intensity. We need to get you out of that environment. I can arrange for you to transfer to another location or... No. Zara interrupted firmly. If I suddenly quit or transfer, they'll know I talked to someone. Besides, you need someone on the inside to help you gather evidence. I'm the only employee willing to take that risk. It's too dangerous. What if they hurt you? Mr. Blackwood, Zara said quietly. I've been in danger since the day I witnessed their first crime and chose to stay silent. At least now I'm doing something about it. Her courage humbled him. Here was a woman with everything to lose: her job, her safety, possibly her life, and she was willing to risk it all to do what was right. Meanwhile, he'd been sitting in boardrooms and penthouse suites, completely oblivious to the suffering of his own employees. What do you need me to do? He asked. Come back to the restaurant tomorrow, but not as a customer. Kevin's planning to be there early, around 6 a.m., to receive a special delivery from one of his fake vendors. If you could observe that transaction. I'll be there, Theodore said immediately. But I want you to promise me something. If the situation becomes too dangerous, if you feel threatened in any way, you get out immediately. You call me, and I'll make sure you and your daughter are protected. Zara looked surprised by his concern. You barely know me. Why would you? Because what you're doing takes incredible courage, Theodore replied honestly. And because nobody should have to choose between their safety and their principles. For a moment, something shifted in Zara's expression. The careful distance she'd been maintaining seemed to soften, and Theodore caught a glimpse of the woman she might be when she wasn't living in fear. Thank you, she said simply. I haven't had anyone offer to protect me in a very long time. The vulnerability in her voice made Theodore's chest tighten. How long have you been on your own? Since Amelia was born 6 years ago. Her father. Zara paused, then seemed to decide on honesty. Let's just say he wasn't interested in the responsibility of parenthood. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was, but it also taught me that I'm stronger than I thought I was, and that Amelia deserves to see her mother standing up for what's right, even when it's scary. They had circled back toward the fountain area, where the evening crowd was beginning to thin out. Theodore realized he didn't want their conversation to end. For the first time in months, he was talking to someone who wasn't trying to impress him or get something from him. Someone who was simply courageously honest. "Zara," he said, "after we resolve this situation with Kevin and his associates, would you consider staying on? Not as a waitress, but in a management position. The company needs people with your integrity and observational skills." She looked genuinely shocked. "You'd offer me a job based on one conversation?" "I'd offer you a job based on your character," Theodore replied. "Everything you've done, documenting the crimes, risking your safety to inform me, refusing to be intimidated, those are leadership qualities." Zara was quiet for a long moment, absorbing his words. "I've been planning to go back to school," she said finally, "to get my business degree, but childcare costs and tuition." She shrugged. It always seemed impossible. What if it wasn't impossible? What if there was a way to work and study simultaneously, with the company supporting your education? "Are you serious?" The hope in her voice was almost heartbreaking. Theodore realized that, for all her strength and dignity, Zara had been struggling alone for so long that the idea of genuine support seemed foreign to her. "Completely serious," he confirmed. "But first, we need to take down the people who've been terrorizing you and stealing from the company." Zara nodded, her expression growing determined again. "Tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I'll text you the address of the loading dock behind the restaurant. Kevin usually meets his vendors there to avoid the security cameras in the main dining area. I'll be there. And Zara, be careful tonight. Don't do anything that might raise suspicion." "I will. And Mr. Blackwood, thank you for believing me. I wasn't sure you would." As she turned to leave, Theodore found himself calling after her. "It's Theodore. Just Theodore." She smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. And the transformation was remarkable. Despite everything she'd endured, despite the fear and exhaustion, there was still light in her eyes. "Good night, Theodore." As he watched her disappear into the Chicago evening, Theodore felt something he hadn't experienced in years. A sense of purpose that went beyond profit margins and quarterly reports. Tomorrow, he would begin the process of reclaiming his business. But more importantly, he would help a remarkable woman reclaim her life. He pulled out his phone and began making calls. If Kevin Murphy thought he could intimidate Theodore Blackwood's employees and steal from his company, he was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. Theodore sat in his black Mercedes-Benz G-Class SUV, parked across the street from the loading dock behind Blackwood Diner. The morning air was crisp at 38 degrees, and a light fog rolled off Lake Michigan, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere in the pre-dawn darkness. He'd been there since 5:15 a.m., nursing a cup of coffee from a nearby 24-hour Dunkin' Donuts and trying to calm his nerves. His phone buzzed with a text from Zara. Kevin just arrived. White van pulling up now. Stay hidden. Through the fog, Theodore watched as an unmarked white cargo van backed up to the restaurant's rear entrance. Kevin Murphy emerged from the building, his bulky frame moving with surprising stealth as he helped unload several boxes marked Premium Beef, Chicago Wholesale Meats. But Theodore had been in the restaurant business long enough to recognize the difference between legitimate food service deliveries and something else entirely. Real meat deliveries came in refrigerated trucks with proper logos and documentation. This looked more like a drug deal than a food transaction. He raised the small digital camera he'd brought and began taking photos, the telephoto lens capturing clear images despite the distance and poor lighting. Kevin was exchanging envelopes with the van driver. Definitely not standard procedure for any legitimate business transaction. 20 minutes later, after the van had departed and Kevin had disappeared back into the restaurant, Theodore's phone rang. "Did you see everything?" Zara's voice was barely above a whisper. "I saw enough. Those weren't food deliveries, were they?" "No. Kevin's been using the restaurant as a distribution point for his brother-in-law's stolen merchandise operation, electronics, jewelry, even designer clothing. He stores everything in the walk-in freezer that's supposedly broken, and then moves it through what looks like legitimate restaurant supply deliveries. Theodore felt his jaw clench. How long has this been going on? At least 8 months, maybe longer. I only figured it out 3 months ago when I came in early for a double shift and saw Kevin loading iPads into takeout containers. Jesus, we're not just talking about embezzlement anymore. This is organized crime. There was a pause before Zara responded. Theodore, there's something else you need to know. Something I didn't tell you last night because it's personal and I wasn't sure if I could trust you yet. What is it? Can you meet me somewhere private? Not the restaurant, obviously, but somewhere we can talk without being overheard. Theodore glanced at his watch. 6:15 a.m. Do you know Lincoln Park Zoo? There's a coffee cart that opens early near the farm in the zoo exhibit. I can be there in 30 minutes. I told Kevin I had a doctor's appointment this morning, so I have a few hours before I need to be back. I'll see you there. The zoo was nearly empty except for early morning joggers and a few dedicated photographers hoping to catch the animals during their most active hours. Theodore found Zara sitting on a bench near the farm exhibit, watching a group of rescued goats play in their enclosure. She'd changed from her work clothes into dark jeans, comfortable walking shoes, and a forest green jacket that brought out the warm undertones in her brown skin. You look different, he said as he approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the cart. Different how? Zara accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. Less guarded, more relaxed. That's what happens when I'm not constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if Kevin Murphy is going to corner me in the supply closet again. Theodore felt anger flare in his chest. He's been cornering you, among other things. Zara's voice was steady, but Theodore could see the tension in her shoulders. That's part of what I need to tell you about. They walked slowly along the path, their footsteps echoing in the quiet morning air. Other than the distant sounds of the city waking up and the occasional animal call, they had the peaceful space mostly to themselves. 3 months ago, Zara began, Kevin started paying more attention to me. At first, I thought it was because he suspected I knew about the stealing, but then he started making comments about my appearance, standing too close when he talked to me, finding excuses to touch my shoulder or my hand. Theodore's grip tightened on his coffee cup. Sexual harassment. It escalated quickly. 2 months ago, he offered me a promotion to assistant manager. When I asked about the job responsibilities, he said my main duty would be keeping him happy after hours. When I declined, he told me that employees who weren't team players often found their hours cut, or their employment terminated for performance issues. Why didn't you file a complaint with HR? Zara gave him a look that was part disbelief, part pity. Theodore, Kevin Murphy is HR for that location. All employee complaints go through him. The corporate structure you've set up makes him essentially untouchable at the restaurant level. The criticism stung because it was accurate. In his drive to decentralize management and reduce corporate overhead, Theodore had given district managers like Kevin too much autonomy. He'd created a system that could be easily exploited by unscrupulous people. I'm going to fix that, he said quietly. The whole structure needs to be overhauled. I believe you will. But for now, I need you to understand why this situation is so dangerous for me personally. It's not just about witnessing financial crimes anymore. They stopped walking near a small pond where ducks were swimming lazy circles in the morning light. Zara sat down on another bench, and Theodore joined her, maintaining respectful distance while staying close enough to hear her quiet voice. Last week, Kevin called me into his office after my shift. He said he'd been thinking about my situation as a single mother, and how difficult it must be to make ends meet on a waitress's salary. Then he offered me an extra $500 a week to spend time with him outside of work. Theodore felt nauseated. He offered to pay you for sex. Not in those exact words, but yes. When I told him I wasn't interested, he reminded me that he had my address, my daughter's school information, and that good childcare was expensive. He said it would be unfortunate if anything happened to my job, because then I might not be able to afford to keep Amelia in her current school. He threatened your daughter again, more subtly this time, but yes. And then he showed me photos. What kind of photos? Zara's hands trembled slightly as she reached into her jacket pocket and withdrew her phone. She scrolled through several images before handing it to Theodore. I took these secretly when he was showing me. Look at the timestamps. Theodore studied the phone screen. The photos showed Amelia at her elementary school, at the park near their apartment, even walking home from her aftercare program. All taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. All dated within the past 2 weeks. He's been stalking your daughter. Her and me both. Last Sunday, we went to Navy Pier for the afternoon. When we got home, there was a note under my door that said, Amelia looked beautiful in her pink dress today. Hope she had fun on the Ferris wheel. Theodore handed the phone back, his mind racing. This wasn't just workplace harassment or even organized crime. This was systematic stalking and intimidation of a woman and child. Kevin Murphy wasn't just a thief. He was a predator. Zara, why didn't you go to the police? What were they supposed to tell the police? That Kevin was stalking and threatening a child? Zara cut him off, her voice laced with frustration. With what proof? Typed note, devoid of fingerprints. Pictures that could have been snapped by anyone with a phone. Kevin was far too clever to commit anything incriminating to paper. Besides, he was practically on a first-name basis with half the Chicago PD, guys who practically lived at the restaurant, Detective Ray Kowalski among them. Kevin comped their meals without fail, the two of them always laughing like old buddies. Theodore began to grasp the enormity of Zara's predicament. This wasn't just garden-variety workplace harassment. It was a viper's nest of corruption that snaked right into the arms of local law enforcement. And despite all that, you still put your trust in me. Why? Zara fell silent, her gaze fixed on a family of ducks gliding serenely across the pond. Because after I recognized you yesterday, I spent 3 solid hours last night devouring everything I could find about Theodore Blackwood and Blackwood Hospitality Group. I read every article, every blog post, every interview. And what did you uncover? I discovered that you started with a single, failing restaurant in Pilsen when you were only 25. The previous owner was about to shutter the doors, leaving a dozen people jobless. You bought it with money you borrowed against your father's life insurance policy. Theodore was taken aback. He hadn't expected her to delve so deeply into his past. That particular detail had been omitted from most of the glossy business profiles written about him. Then, when the 2008 financial crisis hit, Zara continued, instead of resorting to layoffs, you took out a second mortgage on your own home, just to ensure your employees kept getting paid while you weathered the storm. How did you even find that? Chicago Tribune Archives. There was a short piece about local businesses that managed to avoid layoffs during the recession. You were interviewed, but you asked them not to mention the mortgage. You didn't want your employees feeling guilty. Theodore had almost forgotten about that interview. Felt like a lifetime ago. And then there was the story about Maria Rodriguez. Zara added, and Theodore felt a sharp pang in his chest. Maria Rodriguez. He hadn't heard that name spoken in years. What story? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. 5 years ago, one of your waitresses in Evanston was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. Maria Rodriguez, 23 years old, a mother to 2 small children. When she died, you personally covered the cost of her funeral and established college funds for both of her kids. You even hired her mother as a manager at your Lincoln Park location and helped her navigate the citizenship process. Theodore felt the familiar ache that always accompanied memories of Maria. She had been a vibrant, diligent young woman trying desperately to escape an abusive relationship. He'd offered her extra shifts, helped her find a safer apartment, but it hadn't been enough. Her ex-boyfriend had found her anyway. Zara's voice softened. The newspaper reported that you visited her children every month for 2 years, that you attended every school play, every birthday party, every soccer game. That's not the behavior of a ruthless businessman. That's what a good man does. I should have done more to protect her, Theodore said, his voice heavy with regret. If only I'd known how dangerous her situation really was. You did everything you could, Theodore, just like you're doing everything you can to help me now. Theodore finally looked at Zara, truly seeing her for the first time since their meeting. She was more than just a courageous employee trying to expose corruption. She was an astute, resourceful woman who had meticulously investigated him before entrusting him with her life and her daughter's well-being. "That's why you decided you could trust me," he murmured almost to himself. "Because of Maria? Because of how I handled Maria's situation?" "Yes, but also because of something I saw in your eyes yesterday when I handed you that note. You weren't just angry about being deceived or frustrated about the potential business losses. You were genuinely concerned for the people who were being hurt. That told me everything I needed to know about your character." They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching the zoo slowly awaken around them. Theodore found himself studying Zara's profile, the determined set of her jaw, the way she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear when she was deep in thought, the delicate way she cradled her coffee cup with both hands, seeking its warmth. "Tell me about Amelia," he finally said. Zara's entire demeanor seemed to brighten at the mention of her daughter. "She's incredible. 6 years old, about to start first grade at Roosevelt Elementary. She's obsessed with dinosaurs and dreams of becoming a paleontologist. She's also absolutely convinced she's going to discover a new species and name it after her grandmother." "And what was your grandmother's name?" "Beatrice. So, we're going to have Ameliasaurus Beatrice roaming prehistoric Earth someday." Theodore couldn't help but smile at the image. "She sounds wonderful." "She is. She's also the reason I can't just quit my job and disappear. As tempting as that might be, Amelia needs stability, routine, friends. She's already experienced far too much upheaval in her short life because of her father." Zara's expression clouded over slightly. "Marcus, well, let's just say he wasn't prepared for the realities of parenthood. When Amelia was born with some minor complications, nothing serious, just some feeding issues that required a little extra medical attention. He decided that fatherhood was too stressful for him. He left when she was only 4 months old. Has he been in contact since then? Birthday cards twice. No phone calls, no visits, no child support. Which honestly is perfectly fine with me. Amelia deserves better than a father who sees her as a burden." Theodore felt a fresh wave of anger, this time directed at a man he'd never even met. "You've been supporting her completely on your own? Waitressing, some freelance bookkeeping when I can find it, and cleaning office buildings on weekends when Amelia is with my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. It's not glamorous, but we manage." "Bookkeeping? I thought you were a waitress." "I was an accounting major before I had to drop out of college. I'm good with numbers, patterns, financial analysis. That's actually how I first noticed the discrepancies in the restaurant's daily receipts." Theodore stared at her in astonishment. "You're telling me you've been working as a waitress when you have accounting skills?" "I'm telling you that I've been working whatever jobs I could get that would provide health insurance and a flexible schedule to take care of my daughter. Accounting firms don't typically offer part-time positions with full benefits. But if I had the right opportunity, I'd love to finish my degree and work in financial management. I'd love to analyze business operations and help companies improve their efficiency and profitability. I'd love to do work that uses my brain, instead of just my ability to carry plates and smile at rude customers." The passion in her voice was unmistakable. Theodore realized he was looking at a woman who had been forced by circumstances to settle for far less than she was capable of achieving. "After we resolved the situation with Kevin," he said, "I want to offer you a position in corporate financial analysis. You'd work directly with me and my CFO, examining operations across all our locations." Zara turned to him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You're offering me a job I'm not qualified for." "You're more qualified than you think. You identified a complex embezzlement scheme that my certified accountants missed. You documented criminal activity with meticulous detail. You recognized patterns in financial data that escaped trained auditors. Those are exactly the skills I need. Theodore, I don't have a college degree. We'll arrange for you to finish your education while you work. Part-time classes, flexible schedule, full tuition reimbursement. And Amelia would be covered under our executive health plan, which includes pediatric care at Children's Hospital of Chicago." For the first time since he'd met her, Zara looked genuinely overwhelmed. "Why would you do all that for someone you barely know?" Because talent like yours shouldn't be wasted carrying plates in a restaurant where you're being harassed by criminals. And because Theodore paused, realizing he was about to say something that might irrevocably alter the dynamic between them. Because I've spent the last 2 days thinking about you, and not just because of the business situation. Zara's eyes widened slightly. What do you mean? I mean that yesterday when you handed me that note, something shifted for me. It wasn't just about uncovering corruption or protecting my business. It was about this incredibly brave, intelligent woman who was willing to risk everything to do what was right. I haven't been able to stop thinking about that. About you. The admission hung in the air between them. Theodore immediately worried that he had overstepped, that he was making an already complicated situation even more difficult. But Zara didn't recoil or change the subject. Instead, she studied his face with those perceptive dark eyes that seemed to penetrate his very soul. Theodore, she said slowly, I need you to understand something. I'm not looking for a rescuer. I don't need someone to swoop in and fix my life for me. He started to interrupt, but she raised a hand. Let me finish, she said gently but firmly. I'm not looking for a rescuer, but I haven't had a partner in a very long time. Someone who sees me as an equal. Someone who respects my intelligence and my strength. Someone who wants to build something together instead of just taking care of me. Theodore felt his heart rate accelerate. Is that what you think I'm offering? Partnership? I think, Zara said carefully, that you're offering me professional opportunities that I've earned through my own skills and observations. And I think you're also telling me that you're attracted to me as a person, not just grateful for my help with a business problem. That's exactly what I'm telling you. Then I should probably tell you that I've been thinking about you too. Not just as Theodore Blackwood, the CEO, but as the man who listened to me last night without judgment, who believed me when I told him about Kevin's threats, who's sitting here at 7 o'clock in the morning talking to me about my daughter and my dreams instead of just focusing on his business problems. The connection between them was undeniable now, palpable and warm, despite the cool morning air. Theodore found himself leaning slightly closer to her on the bench. This is complicated, he said softly. Extremely complicated, Zara agreed. I'm still technically your employee. You're about to help me expose crimes that could put dangerous people in prison. And I have a 6-year-old daughter who comes first in every decision I make. I wouldn't expect anything less. Amelia should come first. But, Zara continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, complicated doesn't mean impossible. It just means we need to be careful and honest with each other. Theodore's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He glanced at the screen and saw Kevin Murphy's name. It's him, he told Zara. Kevin's calling me. Answer it, she said immediately, her demeanor snapping back into alert mode. But put it on speaker so I can hear. Theodore accepted the call. Hello, Mr. Blackwood. This is Kevin Murphy, District Manager for your North Clark Street location. I understand you visited us yesterday as a customer. Kevin's voice was professionally cordial, but Theodore could detect a subtle undercurrent of suspicion. That's right. I try to visit all our locations periodically to maintain quality standards. Of course, sir. I hope everything met with your satisfaction. The food was excellent. The service was memorable. Zara shot him a quick glance, but Theodore kept his expression neutral. I'm glad to hear that, sir. I wanted to reach out because one of our employees mentioned that you seemed particularly interested in our operations. I just wanted to make sure we addressed any concerns you might have. No concerns at all, just routine observation. Excellent. Well, if you do decide to visit again, please let me know in advance. I'd love to give you a proper tour of our facilities, show you some of the improvements we've been implementing. I'll keep that in mind. Thank you for calling, Kevin. Thank you, sir. Have a great day. Theodore ended the call and looked at Zara. He knows. He suspects something's off. He suspects there's a difference, but not much of one. Zara stood up from the bench, suddenly energized. We need to move faster than we planned. If Kevin thinks you're investigating him, he'll start destroying evidence and possibly relocating his operation. What do you suggest? Tonight, there's a delivery scheduled for 11 p.m. Much larger than usual. Kevin told the staff that we're receiving our weekly food shipment, but I know our actual food deliveries come on Thursday mornings from legitimate vendors. You want me to be there tonight? I want us to be there tonight. You'll need someone inside to verify what's happening and to make sure you're recording the right people doing the right things. Theodore felt his protective instincts flare up again. Absolutely not. If something goes wrong and I'm not there to explain what you're seeing, your evidence might not hold up in court. Theodore, I know you want to protect me, but I'm already in this as deep as it's possible to be. The only way out is through. She was right and he knew it. But the thought of placing her in further danger constricted his chest with anxiety. There's one more thing, Zara said, checking her watch. I need to get back to work soon, but Kevin's planning something for this weekend. He told Brad Peterson that they need to clean house and tie up loose ends before the holidays. What does that mean? I think it means he's planning to eliminate anyone who might be able to testify against him, and I'm probably at the top of that list. Theodore adjusted the small wireless microphone hidden beneath his navy blue polo shirt as he sat in his Mercedes across the street from Zara's apartment building on West Diversey Parkway. The 3-story brick building was typical of Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood, well-maintained but affordable, with small front gardens and fire escapes zigzagging up the exterior walls. His phone buzzed with a text message. *apartment 2B, come up. Amelia's excited to meet you. Theodore had spent the afternoon consulting with his corporate attorney and a private security firm, both of whom had strongly advised him to turn everything over to federal authorities immediately. But Zara was right. Without concrete evidence of tonight's illegal delivery, they had nothing but accusations and suspicions. Kevin Murphy was too clever to leave a paper trail, and his connections with the local police made the situation even more precarious. Taking a deep breath, Theodore climbed the narrow staircase to the second floor. The building smelled faintly of cooking spices and old wood, with a subtle undertone of someone's laundry detergent wafting up from the basement. He could hear the muffled sounds of television voices, a baby crying somewhere above, and children laughing in one of the apartments. Before he could knock, the door to 2B swung open, revealing Zara in dark jeans and a soft burgundy sweater that perfectly complemented her skin tone. She had pulled her hair back into a loose bun, with a few escaped curls framing her face. Perfect timing, she said, stepping aside to let him enter. Amelia just finished her homework, and I promised her she could stay up 30 minutes past bedtime to meet my friend from work. The apartment was small, but immaculately organized, with warm lighting that made the space feel cozy rather than cramped. The living room featured a comfortable-looking burgundy couch with bright yellow throw pillows, a coffee table covered with coloring books and crayons, and walls adorned with Amelia's artwork. A small dining table near the kitchen was set with 3 plates and what appeared to be homemade spaghetti and meatballs. "Mommy?" A small voice called from the kitchen. "Is that your friend? I made extra garlic bread." "Yes, baby. Come meet Mr. Theodore." Amelia Rodriguez Williams was a miniature version of her mother, with the same intelligent dark eyes and expressive face. She wore bright purple leggings, a yellow t-shirt with a smiling T-Rex, and fuzzy dinosaur slippers. Her hair was braided into 2 neat pigtails, decorated with colorful elastic bands. "Hi," she said brightly, extending a small hand for Theodore to shake. "I'm Amelia Rodriguez Williams, and I'm 6 3/4 years old. Mommy says you work with her at the restaurant." "That's right," Theodore said, kneeling down to her eye level as he shook her hand solemnly. "It's very nice to meet you, Amelia. I hear you're an expert on dinosaurs." "I am." Amelia's face lit up with enthusiasm. "Do you want to see my dinosaur collection? I have 43 different species, and I can tell you about each one." "Amelia," Zara said gently, "let's eat dinner first, and then you can show Mr. Theodore your dinosaurs before bedtime." Over dinner, Theodore found himself genuinely charmed by Amelia's endless curiosity and chatter. She told him about her teacher, Mrs. Henderson, her best friend Marcus, who had the same name as her absent father but was much nicer and shared his animal crackers, and her detailed plans for becoming a paleontologist. "My mommy says I need to study really hard in school to become a scientist," Amelia explained seriously, while twirling spaghetti around her fork. She helps me with my math homework every night, even when she's tired from working. Math is very important for scientists. It certainly is, Theodore agreed. Do you like working with numbers? I love numbers. Watch this. Amelia proceeded to demonstrate her addition and subtraction skills, clearly proud of her abilities. Theodore glanced at Zara, who was watching her daughter with obvious love and pride. The affection between them was palpable, and he could see how Zara's entire world revolved around this bright, energetic little girl. After dinner, Amelia gave Theodore the promised tour of her dinosaur collection, which was impressively organized by time period and geological era. She explained the difference between herbivores and carnivores, demonstrated how paleontologists carefully excavate fossils, and showed him her own fossil dig in a sandbox on the apartment's small back porch. This is very impressive, Amelia, Theodore said. Honestly, you know more about dinosaurs than most adults I know. Really? Amelia beamed. Mommy always says I'm smart, but sometimes people don't listen to kids about serious stuff. Well, I think you're brilliant, and I think you're going to make an excellent paleontologist someday. Amelia beamed at the praise, then yawned widely. I'm getting sleepy, but tomorrow is Thursday, which means it's almost Friday, which means it's almost the weekend. Bedtime, little scientist, Zara said, scooping her daughter up for a hug. Say good night to Mr. Theodore. Good night, Mr. Theodore. Will you come visit us again? I want to show you my book about the Mesozoic era next time. I'd love to see it, Theodore said, meaning it completely. As Zara carried Amelia to her bedroom for their nightly routine, Theodore stood alone in the living room, studying the family photos displayed on a narrow bookshelf. Most showed Zara and Amelia at various ages, birthday parties, playground visits, trips to museums and parks. There were a few older photos that appeared to show Zara with her own family, including an elegant older woman who shared her bone structure and regal bearing. That's my grandmother, Beatrice, Zara said softly, returning to the living room. The one Amelia wants to name her dinosaur after. She raised me from the time I was 12. My parents died in a car accident, and Grandma stepped in to take care of me. She was a secretary at a law firm for 40 years, never made much money, but she made sure I understood that education was the key to building a better life. Is she still alive? She passed away 2 years ago. Lung cancer. Zara's voice was steady, but Theodore could see the lingering grief in her eyes. She never got to see me finish college, never got to see Amelia start school. I think about that a lot. How proud she would have been of Amelia's intelligence and curiosity. I think she would have been proud of you, too. Look at what you've built here. A loving home, a brilliant daughter, a life with dignity and purpose despite incredible challenges. Zara settled onto the couch beside him, leaving appropriate space between them, but close enough that he could smell her subtle perfume. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water, working multiple jobs, trying to give Amelia everything she needs, worrying about money and safety and whether I'm making the right decisions for both of us. Every good parent feels that way sometimes. The fact that you worry about doing right by her proves that you are. And other days, Zara continued, I look at her and think about how resilient and happy she is despite everything we've been through, and I feel like maybe I'm doing something right after all. You're doing everything right. Amelia is lucky to have you as her mother. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, the only sounds coming from Amelia's room, where Zara was apparently reading a bedtime story, using different voices for each character. Theodore found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't experienced in years, not the forced relaxation of expensive spa treatments or luxury vacations, but the genuine peace that came from being in a space filled with love and authentic human connection. Theodore, Zara said eventually, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why haven't you ever married? I did some more research today, and every business article mentions that you're one of Chicago's most eligible bachelors, but I couldn't find any information about serious relationships. Theodore considered how much to reveal. I was engaged once about 7 years ago. Her name was Catherine Preston. Her family owns Preston Development. They build luxury condominiums and commercial properties. What happened? I thought we wanted the same things. A life together, maybe children, eventually building something meaningful. But it turned out that Catherine was more interested in the lifestyle that came with being married to a successful businessman than she was in actually being married to me as a person. How did you find out? I overheard her talking to her sister at a charity gala. She was complaining about how boring I was, how I spent too much time working and not enough time at social events. She said she was considering calling off the engagement unless I agreed to hire a management company to run my restaurants, so I could focus on being seen at the right places with the right people. Zara shook her head. She wanted you to give up the work you loved, so you could become a full-time accessory to her social ambitions. Exactly. And when I confronted her about it, she didn't deny it. She said that was what wives of successful men were supposed to do, enhance their husband's image and social standing. She couldn't understand why I wanted to spend my evenings reviewing financial reports instead of attending gallery openings and charity auctions. Did you love her? Theodore thought about it carefully. I thought I did, but looking back, I think I loved the idea of her, the idea of having a partner, someone to share my life with. But we never really understood each other on a fundamental level. And since then, I focused on building my business and convinced myself that I was too busy for serious relationships. It was easier than admitting that I was afraid of making the same mistake again, of choosing someone who looked right on paper but wasn't right for me as a... Zara paused, absorbing Theodore's words. What made you realize Catherine wasn't the one? Aside from overhearing that phone call, of course. Theodore sighed. She never displayed any real curiosity about my work. If I brought up a new restaurant venture or a staffing problem, she'd steer the conversation toward things she deemed more important. What we were wearing to some gala, which luxurious rental we should secure for the summer, whether we should commission an interior designer for the penthouse. She didn't see your restaurants as an integral part of who you are. Exactly. And the restaurants aren't just my income, Zara. They're my legacy. Each location represents dozens of families who rely on those jobs to support their lives, pay their mortgages, and pursue their own dreams. Catherine viewed it all as a tedious necessity, never grasping the significance. That must have been incredibly isolating. It was. More than I even realized at the time. Theodore trailed off, suddenly aware that he was on the verge of revealing something deeply personal. Until I met someone who understood, almost instinctively, that the work itself holds value, not just the financial outcomes. Zara met his gaze, her eyes searching his. Someone who sees the human element within business. Someone willing to risk her own well-being to safeguard her colleagues, even when those colleagues aren't always deserving. Someone with a keen eye for inconsistencies, who cares enough to dig deeper. Someone who rejects both bribes and threats because her integrity is unwavering. Theodore's voice dropped, becoming husky with emotion. Someone who raises a brilliant, compassionate daughter while juggling multiple jobs, yet still finds time to support her neighbors and dream of making the world a better place. The space between them on the sofa seemed to crackle with an unseen energy. Theodore could see Zara's pulse fluttering rapidly at the base of her neck, hear the slight catch in her breath. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. When I handed you that note yesterday, it wasn't solely because I wanted you to be aware of Kevin's illegal activities. What do you mean? I mean, I'd been watching you for weeks before I even knew your name. You'd come in for coffee every few weeks, always requesting the same booth. Always polite to the staff, even when Kevin was being his usual charming self. You'd bring books to read, and you always left a generous tip, even when the service wasn't stellar. Theodore was genuinely surprised. I didn't realize you'd noticed me, specifically. I noticed everything about you. The way you said please and thank you to everyone, including the busboys. The way you inquired about people's families and remembered details from previous conversations. The way you'd slip an extra tip when you sensed someone was having a difficult day. You were paying attention to all that? Zara's gaze intensified. I was attracted to you, Theodore. Long before I knew you were Theodore Blackwood, CEO of anything. I was drawn to the man who treated a harried waitress as a human being deserving of respect and kindness. Theodore felt a surge of warmth spread through his chest. Why didn't you ever? Because I'm a single mother, barely scraping by as a waitress, and you were clearly successful, educated, and completely out of my league. Because I've learned to be wary of men who seem too good to be true. And because I was terrified that if I misread the situation, I might lose one of the few jobs that provided health insurance for Amelia. You weren't misreading anything, Theodore said softly, reaching for her hand. I looked forward to those coffee visits more than I care to admit. I told myself it was because I liked the atmosphere of the restaurant, but really, it was because I hoped you'd be working. Really? Really? You have this extraordinary ability to make everyone around you feel seen and valued. Even when Kevin was being a jerk to you, you'd maintain your composure and find ways to make the customers feel welcome. I admired that strength. I thought maybe I was imagining the connection I felt when we talked. You weren't imagining it. They were leaning closer now, the magnetic pull between them undeniable. Theodore could see flecks of gold shimmering in Zara's dark eyes, could smell the subtle, clean scent of her shampoo. This is complicated, Zara whispered, echoing his words from that morning. Very complicated. Theodore agreed, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. But I haven't felt this way about anyone in a very long time. Neither have I. And after tonight, if everything goes smoothly with gathering evidence against Kevin, after tonight we'll still need to tread carefully. There will be investigations, potentially a trial. Your safety and Amelia's has to be paramount. I know. But Theodore, I need you to understand that I'm not looking for someone to rescue me or fix my life. I'm looking for someone to share my life with. Someone who sees me as an equal partner. That's precisely what I want to offer you, Zara. Partnership, not rescue. Then maybe, Zara said, her voice barely audible, after we deal with Kevin Murphy and all this criminal nonsense, we can explore what that partnership might look like. I'd like that very much. Theodore reached out slowly, giving her ample space to withdraw if she chose to. When she didn't, he gently cupped her face in his hand, his thumb tracing the delicate curve of her cheekbone. Zara. His words were abruptly cut short by the sound of Amelia's bedroom door creaking open. Mommy, I need some water, and I can't reach the good cups in the kitchen. Zara pulled back quickly, her cheeks flushed a delicate rose. Coming, baby. As she hurried to assist Amelia, Theodore leaned back against the couch, his heart still pounding from their near kiss. The domestic interruption was probably for the best. They needed to maintain their focus on the evening's mission. But the interrupted moment had confirmed what he'd been feeling since yesterday. This wasn't just attraction or gratitude. This was something real, something deep, and something worth protecting at all costs. Zara returned a few minutes later, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. Sorry about that. She's usually sound asleep by now, but I think she's excited about meeting you. She's wonderful, Zara. You've done an incredible job raising her. Thank you. That means a lot, coming from you. They spent the next hour meticulously reviewing their plan for the night surveillance operation. Theodore would park across the street from the diner around 10:30 p.m. Positioning his car to provide a clear view of the loading dock. Zara would remain inside during her closing shift, diligently gathering any additional evidence she could find and relaying updates on Kevin's activities via text message. What if something goes wrong? Theodore asked, his brow furrowed with concern. What if Kevin suspects you're involved? Then I'll deny everything and claim I was simply doing my job. But Theodore, if something does go wrong, if Kevin becomes threatening, or if things escalate and become dangerous, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Name it. Promise me you'll call the police immediately, even if it means our evidence isn't airtight. My safety and Amelia's safety are far more important than building a perfect case against Kevin Murphy. I promise. But Zara, I don't want you taking any unnecessary risks tonight. If Kevin asks you to work late or go into the storage areas, find an excuse to remain in the dining room, where there are other people around. I will. But I also need your promise. If this goes sideways, if I get arrested, or if Kevin somehow manages to turn this all around on us, you'll ensure Amelia is taken care of. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, has agreed to look after her temporarily if something happens to me, But I need to know that someone with resources will be looking out for her long-term interests. Theodore felt a chill run down his spine at the mere thought of anything happening to Zara. Nothing's going to happen to you, Zara. We're going to expose Kevin's crimes, get him arrested, and then we're going to build a life together. All three of us. All three of us? Yes, you, me, and Amelia. I know it's fast, and I know we need to take things slowly for her sake, but Zara, I can already see how we could be a family. Tears welled up in Zara's eyes. I've been afraid to even entertain that possibility. Why? Because Amelia's already experienced one man walking out of her life. I can't risk letting her get attached to someone who might disappear when things get difficult or complicated. I'm not going anywhere, Zara, Theodore said firmly, his voice resolute. Whatever happens tonight, whatever happens with the investigation, whatever challenges we face building a relationship, I'm in this for the long haul. I want to be the kind of man who shows up, who keeps his promises, who puts family first. Do you mean that? I've never meant anything more in my life. At 9:45 p.m. Theodore prepared to leave for his surveillance position. As he reached for his jacket, Zara gently caught his hand. Theodore, before you go, I need to say something. What is it? I'm falling in love with you, she said quietly, her eyes filled with vulnerability. I know it's too soon, and probably crazy, given everything that's happening, but I needed you to know before tonight. Theodore felt his chest expand with warmth and joy. I'm falling in love with you too, Zara. And tomorrow, when Kevin Murphy is in police custody, and we don't have to worry about imminent danger anymore, I'm going to kiss you properly. Zara smiled, a spark of playful anticipation in her eyes. I'll hold you to that promise. You'd better, Theodore said, returning her smile. As Theodore headed toward the door, both of them knew that the next few hours would determine not just the outcome of their investigation, but the future of their relationship and Amelia's safety. The stakes had never been higher, but neither had their commitment to each other. Theodore parked his Mercedes across from Ali's diner on North Clark Street, selecting a spot nestled between two larger vehicles to help conceal his presence. The October night air was crisp, with a biting wind whipping through the deserted streets of Lincoln Park. Most of the surrounding businesses had closed hours ago, leaving only the inviting glow from the diner's windows and the occasional flash of headlights from passing cars. He adjusted the miniature recording device discreetly clipped inside his jacket and tested the camera app on his phone one last time. Everything had to function flawlessly tonight. They might not get another opportunity to catch Kevin Murphy in the act. Through the diner's expansive front windows, Theodore could see Zara moving with practiced efficiency between the tables, clearing dishes and wiping down surfaces. Two other servers were working the closing shift. Janet, a heavy-set woman in her 50s who had been a loyal employee for 8 years, and Danny, a college student working nights to finance his engineering studies at Northwestern University. Theodore's phone vibrated with an incoming text message from Zara. Kevin just arrived, acting jumpy, keeps checking his watch and glancing toward the loading dock. Something's definitely going down tonight. He quickly replied, stay visible. Don't go anywhere alone with him. Understood. We'll keep you updated. At 10:47 p.m. A dark blue panel van pulled into the alley behind the restaurant, parking directly alongside the loading dock. Theodore couldn't make out the license plate from his vantage point, but he activated the video recording function on his phone as two figures clad in black hoodies emerged from the van and cautiously approached the restaurant's rear entrance. His phone buzzed again. Two guys just entered through the back. Kevin sent Danny home early and instructed Janet to finish cleaning the front dining room. He's taking me to the storage area to assist with inventory. This is it. Theodore's blood ran cold. No, Zara, don't go back there alone with him. Invent an excuse. Stay in the dining room. If I refuse, he'll know something's wrong. I can handle this. Just be ready to call 911 if I don't text you back within 15 minutes. Zara, please? But she didn't respond to his follow-up texts. Through the diner windows, Theodore watched Janet methodically cleaning tables, seemingly oblivious to the ominous events unfolding in the back of the building. The front dining area appeared deceptively normal, even peaceful. But Theodore's instincts screamed that everything was about to go horribly wrong. 12 minutes ticked by without any further communication from Zara. Theodore was reaching for his phone to dial 911 when movement in the alley caught his attention. The two men from the van were now maneuvering industrial-sized containers on dollies out of the restaurant, the kind typically used for restaurant supply deliveries. But these containers were being removed from the restaurant, not brought in. He zoomed in with his phone camera, attempting to capture clear footage of the men's faces and the van's license plate. The image quality wasn't ideal, but it might be sufficient for investigators to identify the individuals involved. 15 minutes. Still no word from Zara. Theodore was poised to call 911 when his phone finally buzzed with a message, but it wasn't from Zara's number. "Mr. Blackwood, this is Kevin Murphy. I believe you've been looking for me." Theodore's hands went numb. How had Kevin obtained his personal cell phone number? How did Kevin even know he was there? Another message arrived almost immediately. "Oh, did I surprise you? You're not as clever as you seem to think you are. Did you really believe that nobody would recognize the famous Theodore Blackwood, even in your cute little disguise?" Theodore's mind raced. Someone at the restaurant had identified him and reported back to Kevin. But who and when? "Here's what's going to happen next. You're going to drive away from here and forget everything you think you saw tonight. You're going to fire Zara Williams for theft and insubordination, and you're going to pretend this conversation never occurred. And if I don't?" The response was instantaneous. "Then your new girlfriend and her precious little daughter are going to have a very unfortunate accident. Accidents happen all the time in this neighborhood. Break-ins, car crashes, gas leaks. Such a shame when hardworking single mothers get caught up in dangerous situations." Theodore felt a surge of rage building in his chest, hot and suffocating. "If you hurt them, you'll what? Call the police? Go ahead. Tell them about your wild theories. Tell them about imaginary criminal conspiracies. By the time they finish laughing at you, Zara and Amelia will be just another tragic news story. What do you want? I want you to understand that you're not in control here, Blackwood. I know about your little surveillance mission tonight. I know about the recording equipment you're wearing. I know about your grand plan to expose me to the authorities. How could Kevin possibly know about the recording equipment? Theodore had been meticulous in concealing it, and only Zara knew about their plan. Unless... That's right, Mr. Blackwood. You're starting to understand. Your precious Zara has been working with me from the very beginning." Theodore's world tilted on its axis. That couldn't be possible. Could it? Think about it carefully. How convenient that she recognized you so quickly. How perfectly she played the role of the concerned employee trying to help. How effortlessly she gained your trust and learned all about your investigation. You're lying. Am I? Who else knew about your recording equipment tonight? Who else knew precisely when and where you'd be conducting surveillance? Who else had access to your personal information and daily routine? Theodore felt a wave of nausea wash over him, but it couldn't be true. Zara's concern for her daughter was palpable and genuine. Her fear when discussing Kevin's threats had been real. The connection between them, the love that was beginning to blossom, that couldn't all be a carefully crafted facade. Could it? Still don't believe me? Check your email. With trembling hands, Theodore opened his email app. A new message had arrived from an unknown address with the subject line, "Evidence." The email contained a series of photographs that turned Theodore's blood to ice. Photos of him entering and leaving Zara's apartment building. Photos of him playfully interacting with Amelia in the small backyard. Photos of him and Zara sitting close together on the couch, obviously taken through the apartment window. But the most damning photo showed Zara shaking hands with Kevin Murphy in the restaurant's parking lot. Both of them were smiling. The timestamp indicated the photo had been taken that afternoon, after Theodore had left the restaurant. "She's been reporting your every move to me since Sunday. Every conversation, every plan, every moment of vulnerability you've shared with her. You're lying. That's impossible. Did you really think a woman like that could fall in love with a man like you so quickly without ulterior motives?" Theodore stared blankly at the photos, his mind reeling. desperately trying to reconcile the image of Zara shaking hands with Kevin with everything he thought he knew about her. The image was devastating, but something about it felt off. Her body language appeared tense, not friendly, and the angle of the photograph made it impossible to discern the full context of their interaction. Don't feel too bad, Mr. Blackwood. Zara is remarkably skilled at what she does. The helpless single mother act, the adorable child in need of protection, the vulnerable woman searching for love. She's perfected these roles before. Did you know she's never actually worked at any of my other restaurant locations? Did you know her previous employment history has a very interesting 2-year gap? What are you saying? I'm saying that Zara Williams is a professional con artist, specializing in targeting wealthy, lonely men. And you, Mr. Blackwood, were the perfect mark. Theodore felt as though he was drowning, suffocated by a sea of doubt and confusion. Everything Kevin was saying completely contradicted what he felt in his heart about Zara. But the evidence was glaring at him. The photos, the convenient timing of her appearance in his life, the unnerving ease with which she had gained his trust. Still there, Mr. Blackwood? Or are you finally beginning to realize how thoroughly you've been played? Where is she now? Safe and sound, collecting her payment for a job well done. But don't worry, she's not entirely heartless. She did mention that she felt a little bad about exploiting your obvious loneliness. Apparently, you're a somewhat better man than most of her usual targets. Theodore closed his eyes, desperately trying to think clearly through the agonizing pain and confusion. But before he could process everything, another message arrived. Oh, and Mr. Blackwood, those federal investigators you contacted this afternoon, the ones you asked to look into my business operations? They received an anonymous tip tonight about a certain CEO who's been embezzling from his own restaurants and framing innocent employees to cover his tracks. What? Zara provided them with very convincing evidence of your financial crimes. Bank records, forged documents, witness statements from concerned employees. By tomorrow morning, you'll be the one under federal investigation. Theodore's hands were shaking so violently he could barely type. This is insane. None of that is true. Truth is relative, Mr. Blackwood. And right now, the truth is that you're a corrupt businessman who got caught stealing from his own company. The truth is that you tried to seduce and manipulate an innocent employee to help you cover up your crimes. The truth is that when she refused to participate in your criminal conspiracy, you threatened her and her child. No one will believe that. It's absurd. Won't they? Lonely billionaire, vulnerable single mother, threats and coercion. It's a very believable narrative, especially when it's supported by audio recordings of your conversations, financial documents with your forged signature, and testimony from multiple witnesses. Theodore realized with growing horror that Kevin had been meticulously planning this elaborate trap for far longer than just tonight. This wasn't a simple theft operation. This was a meticulously crafted scheme designed to destroy him completely. What do you want? I want you to disappear. Leave Chicago tonight. Transfer control of your restaurant empire to my designated management company. Sign the papers my lawyers will deliver to you tomorrow morning, and vanish from our lives permanently. And if I refuse, then federal agents will arrest you tomorrow afternoon for embezzlement, fraud, and criminal conspiracy. You'll spend the next 10 years in prison while I run your restaurants into the ground. And Zara and Amelia will remain in constant danger from your criminal associates, who won't be too happy about your sudden cooperation with federal investigators. Theodore felt utterly trapped, suffocated by the insidious web of lies and manipulation Kevin had so meticulously constructed. But one crucial piece of the puzzle still didn't fit. If Zara was working with Kevin from the beginning, why hadn't he simply had her feed him false information about the thefts? Why involve federal investigators at all? Because, Mr. Blackwood, this was never about the petty theft operation. This was about taking everything you've built and making it mine. Your restaurants, your reputation, your freedom, everything. The theft was merely the bait to lure you into a much larger, more elaborate trap. How long have you been planning this? Since the day you inherited your daddy's little business empire and decided you were somehow smarter than everyone else. Did you truly believe you could build a billion-dollar company without making enemies? Did you honestly think that nobody would notice how easily it would be to destroy a man who has no family, no close friends, and a pathological need to rescue damsels in distress? The sheer cruelty laced throughout Kevin's messages was breathtaking. But Theodore forced himself to zero in on the inconsistencies and lingering questions that plagued his mind. Kevin insisted that Zara was a professional con artist, but Theodore had personally witnessed the unwavering love and devotion between her and Amelia. He'd felt the palpable and genuine fear she'd exhibited when discussing Kevin's threats. He'd experienced the undeniable connection between them when they had almost kissed earlier that evening. That couldn't all be a lie, could it? You're lying about Zara. Am I? Then where is she right now? Why isn't she answering her phone? Why hasn't she attempted to warn you that your position has been compromised? Theodore's phone screen revealed that his last 3 text messages to Zara remained unread. It had been well over 30 minutes since their last communication. Maybe she's unable to respond because you're holding her against her will. Or perhaps she's too busy celebrating the successful completion of her assignment. Mr. Blackwood, I'm going to give you one final opportunity to accept reality. Zara Williams played you flawlessly. She identified your psychological vulnerabilities, carefully crafted a persona designed to exploit your inherent hero complex, and manipulated you into trusting her implicitly. It was a masterful performance, and you fell for every single moment of it. I don't believe you. I refuse to believe you. Then prove me wrong. Drive to her apartment right now. See if she's there. See if she's alone. See if she greets you with the same warmth and affection she displayed earlier tonight. Fine, I will. Excellent. But Mr. Blackwood, when you discover that apartment 2B is completely empty, that the lease was signed under a false name, and that your precious Zara has vanished without a trace, I want you to remember this conversation. I want you to remember how easily you were manipulated by a woman who saw you as nothing more than a lucrative target. And I want you to remember that I gave you a chance to walk away. Now it's your last chance. Theodore started his car with trembling hands, his heart hammering against his ribs with a frantic intensity. Kevin had to be lying. There was simply no way that Zara's feelings for him were manufactured or that her love for Amelia was merely an act. There was no way that their entire connection had been nothing more than a calculated deception. But as he drove rapidly toward West Diversey Parkway, doubt crept into his mind like a corrosive poison. Zara had recognized him remarkably quickly. She had conveniently approached him with that note at precisely the right moment. She had gained his trust with suspicious ease. And now, she wasn't responding to any of his messages. The 3-story brick apartment building looked exactly as it had when he'd left earlier that evening. But Theodore immediately noticed that all the lights in apartment 2B were switched off. At nearly midnight, that wasn't necessarily unusual. Amelia would likely be asleep, and Zara might be as well if she'd already returned from the restaurant. But something deep down felt wrong, terribly wrong. Theodore cautiously climbed the narrow staircase to the 2nd floor, his footsteps echoing ominously in the otherwise deserted hallway. The building was silent except for the distant hum of a refrigerator and the faint, muffled sound of a television emanating from one of the other apartments. He knocked softly on the door to apartment 2B, not wanting to wake Amelia if she was sleeping. No response. He knocked again, slightly louder this time. Still nothing. Theodore tried calling Zara's cell phone, listening intently. Theodore strained, listening intently for the familiar chime of Zara's doorbell. But the apartment offered only an unsettling silence. He battled down a surge of panic and reached for the doorknob. To his utter disbelief, it turned. Unlocked. Zara? He called, his voice barely a whisper as he cautiously stepped inside. It's Theodore. Are you here? The apartment was shrouded in darkness, an eerie stillness permeating the air. Theodore groped for the light switch, his fingers fumbling in the unfamiliar void. When the lights flickered on, illuminating the stark reality, his world crumbled. The apartment was not merely empty of people. It was devoid of all traces of life. The comfortable burgundy couch, where he'd imagined countless cozy evenings, was gone. The coffee table, usually scattered with Amelia's colorful coloring books, had vanished without a trace. The dining table, The scene of shared spaghetti dinners and heartfelt conversations was nowhere to be seen. The walls, which had proudly displayed Amelia's artwork, were now bare, save for the faint outlines where picture frames had once hung, ghostly reminders of a life that had been. The bookshelf, overflowing with family photos and cherished memories, had disappeared, along with every vestige of the life Theodore had witnessed just hours earlier. He stumbled through the empty rooms, dazed and disoriented. The kitchen offered nothing but the standard, impersonal appliances. Amelia's bedroom, where he had so admired her impressive dinosaur collection and the spark of future ambition in her bright eyes, was utterly vacant. No furniture, no toys, no sign that a vibrant 6-year-old had ever inhabited the space. In what had been Zara's bedroom, Theodore found only a single piece of paper lying forlornly on the bare floor. His fingers numb with shock, he picked it up and unfolded it, his eyes scanning the handwritten note. Mr. Blackwood. By the time you read this, you'll understand that everything you believed about me was a carefully constructed lie. I'm sorry it had to end this way, but business is business. The woman you thought you were falling in love with never existed. Z. Theodore sank to the floor, the note trembling in his hands. The handwriting was undeniably Zara's. He recognized the distinctive slant from the note she'd slipped him under his coffee cup. But the cold, calculated tone of the message was like a shard of ice piercing his heart. His phone buzzed, the sound cutting through the silence. A final, devastating message from Kevin. Now you understand. Zara and Amelia are long gone, Mr. Blackwood. You'll never see them again. My lawyers will contact you in the morning with the transfer documents. Sign them, disappear, and this nightmare ends. Refuse, and I'll destroy what's left of your life and reputation. Federal agents will be at your penthouse at 8 a.m. tomorrow to arrest you for embezzlement and fraud. Unless, of course, you're somewhere else by then, somewhere far away where extradition might prove difficult. Theodore stared at his phone, the words blurring before his eyes, unable to comprehend the enormity of the betrayal, the sheer scale of his loss. In less than 72 hours, his life had been irrevocably shattered. He'd gone from being a successful businessman investigating petty theft to a heartbroken fugitive facing federal charges. But the destruction of his career, the threat of imprisonment, paled in comparison to the devastating realization that the woman he had allowed himself to fall in love with, the profound connection he had felt with her, the future he had so vividly imagined, the family he had dreamed of building, all of it had been an elaborate fiction, a meticulously crafted illusion designed to destroy him. He thought about Amelia's bright-eyed curiosity, her encyclopedic knowledge of dinosaurs, her unbridled enthusiasm for becoming a paleontologist. Had that brilliant little girl been nothing more than a skilled actress, reciting lines from a script? Had her affection for him been carefully rehearsed, her every gesture calculated? Had her bedtime routine, her innocent questions, her shy, lingering goodbye hugs, all been part of an elaborate performance? The thought churned in his stomach, a wave of nausea rising in his throat. Theodore stumbled out of the empty apartment and down the stairs, feeling as though he were trapped in a waking nightmare. Everything he believed about love, trust, and the fundamental goodness of human connection had been irrevocably shattered in the space of a single agonizing hour. As he sat in his car, parked outside the building that had held the happiest moments of his adult life, Theodore faced the most agonizing choice of his existence. Flee Chicago, abandoning everything he had worked to achieve, his reputation, his legacy, or stay and fight charges he knew he couldn't disprove, armed with evidence meticulously fabricated by professionals. Either way, he would never see Zara Williams again. Either way, the woman he had fallen in love with had never truly existed. But as Theodore sat in the darkness, a small, insistent voice in the back of his mind whispered a question that refused to be silenced. If Zara had been conning him from the very beginning, a cold, calculating grifter, why had she looked so genuinely terrified when Kevin's name was mentioned? And why had her love for Amelia seemed so achingly authentic, so unguarded? Maybe Kevin was telling the truth. Maybe Theodore had been the perfect mark, blinded by his own loneliness and desperation for connection. and everything he'd felt had been nothing more than wishful thinking, a desperate yearning for something real. Or maybe, just maybe, this was exactly what Kevin wanted him to believe, the final, devastating blow in his calculated campaign of destruction. Theodore sat in his Mercedes outside the empty apartment building for nearly an hour, staring at the darkened windows of 2B, trying to make sense of the wreckage of his life, desperately searching for a lifeline in the swirling storm of deceit. The October wind rattled the car windows, and the street was deserted save for a few parked cars and the occasional taxi speeding toward Lincoln Park. His phone had remained silent since Kevin's final, threatening message, but Theodore's mind was anything but quiet. Every moment he'd shared with Zara replayed in excruciating detail, a relentless loop of joy and heartbreak. Her nervous laughter when she'd first approached him, the way her hands had trembled when she'd spoken about Kevin's threats, the genuine pride that had resonated in her voice when she'd spoken about Amelia's intelligence. Had all of it been a carefully constructed performance, a charade designed to manipulate him? Theodore started the engine and drove aimlessly through the empty Chicago streets, past the late-night diners and 24-hour convenience stores that catered to the city's insomniacs and night shift workers. Almost without conscious thought, he found himself heading toward the lakefront, drawn by the desperate need for the space and clarity that only the vast expanse of Lake Michigan could provide. He parked at North Avenue Beach and walked out onto the pier, the frigid wind cutting through his thin jacket, chilling him to the bone. The lake stretched endlessly before him, a dark, churning expanse of water meeting the even darker sky at an invisible horizon. The city lights reflected on the waves like scattered diamonds, beautiful and distant, yet impossibly out of reach. This is where it ends, Theodore thought, a wave of despair washing over him. Everything I've built, everything I've worked for, destroyed by my own stupidity and loneliness. His phone buzzed, the harsh electronic sound jarring him from his bleak reverie. A text message from an unknown number. Mr. Blackwood. This is Attorney Patricia Henley. Mr. Murphy has retained my services to handle your asset transfer documents. I'll be at your building at 7 a.m. tomorrow with the paperwork. Please be available to sign, or my client will proceed with alternative measures. Theodore deleted the message without responding, the threat implicit in its carefully chosen words hanging heavy in the air. 7 hours until his world officially ended. 7 hours to decide whether to run and become a ghost or stay and fight a battle he couldn't win. He thought about his father, William Blackwood, the man who had built their first restaurant from nothing back in 1987, a testament to his unwavering dedication and hard work. William had been a good man, honest, hard-working, and fiercely devoted to treating his employees fairly and his customers well. He would be utterly ashamed to see what his son had allowed their legacy to become, the dark cloud of scandal and corruption that now threatened to engulf everything he had built. But what if Kevin is lying about everything? The thought came unbidden, a flicker of hope cutting through Theodore's despair like a lighthouse beam piercing through the fog. What if the elaborate deception wasn't Zara's carefully orchestrated con job, but Kevin's twisted masterpiece, a Machiavellian plot designed to frame him and seize control of his company? Theodore pulled out his phone and opened the photos Kevin had sent him earlier. He studied each image meticulously, scrutinizing every detail, looking for something he had missed in his initial shock and panic. The timestamp on the photo of Zara shaking hands with Kevin indicated that it had been taken that afternoon. But something about it still bothered him, a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. He zoomed in on Zara's face, magnifying the image until the pixels blurred. Even in the grainy photo, her expression didn't look friendly or conspiratorial, not the triumphant smile of a con artist celebrating a successful heist. Her smile seemed forced, strained, her posture tense and guarded. And was that a faint bruise on her left temple, partially hidden by a stray strand of her dark hair? Theodore's heart began to race, a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins. What if that photo didn't depict Zara accepting payment for a job well done? What if it showed her being threatened, coerced, or worse? He scrolled back through his text conversation with Zara from earlier that evening, rereading her messages with new eyes, searching for hidden meanings. desperate for any sign that might reveal the truth. Kevin just arrived. Acting nervous. Keeps checking his watch and looking toward the loading dock. Something's definitely happening tonight. 2 men just came in through the back. Kevin sent Danny home early and told Janet to finish cleaning the front dining room. He's taking me to the storage area to help with inventory. This is it. If I don't go, he'll know something's wrong. I can handle this. Just be ready to call 911 if I don't text you back in 15 minutes. Theodore's blood ran cold. Zara had been afraid, genuinely terrified, but she'd gone with Kevin anyway because she hadn't wanted to jeopardize their investigation, hadn't wanted to expose his corruption and abuse. She'd risked her own safety to help him, and he'd been sitting in his car, paralyzed by doubt and fear, while Kevin what? What had happened to her in that storage room? Theodore's hands shook uncontrollably as he fumbled with his phone. Speed dialing 911. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report a missing person. A woman named Zara Williams was last seen at Ali's Diner on North Clark Street around 11 p.m. tonight. She may be in danger. Sir, can you describe the nature of the danger? She was investigating criminal activity at the restaurant, and the manager threatened her. She stopped responding to texts, and her apartment has been completely emptied out. How long has she been missing? Theodore checked his phone, his fingers trembling as he calculated the time. Almost 2 hours since her last message, 2 agonizing hours filled with uncertainty and dread. Almost 2 hours. I'm sorry, sir, but we can't file a missing person report until someone has been gone for at least 24 hours, unless there's evidence of foul play. Has anyone witnessed a crime or found signs of violence? No, but I'd suggest contacting the person's family members or friends to see if they know where she might be. If she's still missing tomorrow night, call us back. The line went dead, the sterile click echoing in Theodore's ear. He stared at his phone in frustration and mounting desperation. The police couldn't help him, and he had no way to contact Zara's family or friends. Hell, he didn't even know if Amelia was her real daughter, if any part of their story was true. But his gut, the same instinct that had guided him through countless business deals and navigated him through treacherous corporate waters, told him Zara was in danger. Real, immediate danger. Theodore got back in his car and drove, his tires squealing as he pulled out of the parking spot, heading back toward Ali's Diner, his mind racing, trying to piece together the fragments of truth scattered amidst the lies and deception. If Kevin had been planning this elaborate frame job for months, as the evidence seemed to suggest, he would have needed time to set everything up. The forged financial documents, the fake evidence planted at his penthouse, the coordinated timing with the federal investigators he now believed were in Kevin's pocket. None of that could have been arranged in a single evening, which meant Kevin had known Theodore was coming to Chicago before Theodore had even made the decision himself. How is that possible? Theodore's thoughts raced back to Sunday morning when he had first decided to investigate the Chicago location personally. He'd made that decision alone in his Manhattan penthouse, wrestling with the numbers, poring over the spreadsheets, and finally deciding that the only way to get to the bottom of the discrepancies was to see the operation for himself. He hadn't discussed it with anyone, hadn't even told his assistant until Monday morning. Unless Theodore pulled over to the side of the road, his breath catching in his throat. He grabbed his phone and called his assistant, Jennifer Martinez, despite the late hour. Mr. Blackwood? Is everything all right? It's almost 1 a.m. Jennifer, I need you to check something for me. Last weekend, did anyone call asking about my schedule or travel plans? Well, yes, actually. On Saturday afternoon, someone from the Chicago restaurant called, asking about your availability for a surprise inspection. They said they were planning improvements and wanted to make sure you wouldn't be visiting unexpectedly. Who called? The caller said he was the assistant manager. Kevin something. He seemed very concerned about making a good impression. Theodore's heart sank, a cold wave of dread washing over him. Kevin had known he was coming before Theodore had even decided to make the trip. The entire scenario, from Zara's perfectly timed approach to the investigation that followed, had been orchestrated from the beginning, a meticulously planned trap designed to lure him into Kevin's web. Jennifer, one more question. Did you tell this Kevin person when I would be arriving in Chicago? I told him you hadn't scheduled anything yet, but I mentioned that you typically do surprise visits on Monday mornings when you travel. Why? Did I do something wrong? No, you did exactly what you were supposed to do. Thank you. Theodore hung up the phone and sat in his car, staring blankly at the windshield. The final pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place, the dark picture becoming chillingly clear. Kevin had known he was coming, and he had prepared accordingly, setting the stage for Theodore's downfall. But that still didn't answer the most important question, the one that haunted his every thought and fueled his desperate hope. Was Zara an accomplice in Kevin's scheme, a willing participant in the elaborate con, or was she a victim, a pawn caught in a deadly game she hadn't even realized she was playing? He drove back to Ali's diner, parking in the same spot he had used for surveillance earlier. The restaurant was dark now, the front doors locked and the windows shuttered, but Theodore could see a faint light emanating from the office windows on the second floor. Someone was still in the building, lurking in the shadows. Theodore circled the block and parked in the alley behind the restaurant, near the loading dock where he had seen the suspicious van earlier that evening. The van was gone, but the loading dock door was slightly ajar, a dark invitation into the unknown. Against every instinct for self-preservation, Theodore got out of his car and cautiously approached the building, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear voices coming from somewhere inside, muffled conversation that he couldn't quite make out, the murmur of hushed tones laced with an undercurrent of menace. The loading dock door opened into a storage area filled with restaurant supplies. Cases of canned goods, stacks of bags of flour and sugar, industrial-sized containers of cooking oil, the mundane tools of the culinary trade transformed into potential obstacles in the darkness. Theodore moved carefully between the towering stacks of inventory, his senses on high alert, following the sound of the voices toward the front of the building. I told you to keep her quiet, not knock her unconscious. A man's voice was saying, the cold tone instantly recognizable as Kevin Murphy's. She was fighting too much. Another voice replied, gruff and defensive. Scratched the hell out of my arms. Had to calm her down. Well, wake her up. We need her conscious for the phone call. Theodore's blood turned to ice, a wave of fury surging through him. They had Zara and she was hurt, possibly seriously injured. He crept closer to the source of the voices, staying hidden behind a tall rack of supplies, his breath held tight in his chest. Through a gap between the boxes, he could see into the restaurant's office area. Kevin was there with two other men, the same menacing figures Theodore had seen loading containers into the van earlier that evening. And tied to a chair in the center of the room, her head slumped forward and her dark hair obscuring her face, was Zara. Theodore had never felt rage like this before. Pure, white-hot fury that made his vision blur and his hands shake. These men had hurt the woman he loved, had terrorized her, had used her as a pawn in their twisted game. But 3 against 1 were not good odds, especially when the 3 men had guns visible in their waistbands. Theodore needed help, but the police had already dismissed his concerns, and he had no concrete proof of what was happening, no evidence to present to the authorities. Then he remembered his phone. He could record everything, gather irrefutable evidence, and then call 911 with concrete proof of a crime in progress. Theodore activated his phone's camera and started recording, zooming in on the scene unfolding in the office, capturing the chilling drama in real time. One of Kevin's accomplices was trying to wake Zara, roughly shaking her shoulders, his movements brutal and insensitive. Come on, sweetheart. Time to make a phone call to your boyfriend. Zara's head lifted slowly, her dark hair falling away from her face, and Theodore's heart broke when he saw the extent of her injuries. Her left eye was swollen shut, the delicate skin around it bruised and discolored. There was dried blood on her lip, and finger-shaped bruises were clearly visible on her throat, a testament to the violence she had endured. But even in her injured state, her right eye blazed with defiance, a spark of indomitable spirit that refused to be extinguished. Go to hell, she said clearly, her voice hoarse but unwavering. Kevin stepped closer to her chair, his expression a mask of icy control. Now, Zara, is that any way to talk to someone who's offering you a very generous business proposition? I already told you, I'm not calling him. I'm not reading your script, and I'm not helping you destroy an innocent man. One of the other men backhanded her across the face, the brutal blow snapping her head violently to the side. Theodore had to bite his own hand to keep from crying out, to suppress the primal urge to rush into the room and tear these men apart with his bare hands. That innocent man is worth more than you'll ever see in 10 lifetimes, Kevin said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. And all we're asking you to do is make one little phone call. Tell him you're safe. Tell him you're sorry for lying to him. Tell him you're leaving Chicago forever. Simple. And if I refuse, then your daughter really will be in danger. Right now, Amelia is safe at her grandmother's house in Milwaukee, completely unaware that Mommy is having a difficult evening. But that could change very quickly if you don't cooperate. Theodore's heart lurched. The air knocked out of his lungs. Amelia was real. Zara's love for her daughter was genuine, which meant everything else, the emotions he had witnessed, the moments of connection he had felt, might be real too. Her fear, her courage, her unwavering spirit, her feelings for him. They might not have been an elaborate act, a carefully constructed lie. You bastard, Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. She's just a child who needs her mother to make smart choices. Now, are you going to make that phone call? Or do I need to send my friends to Milwaukee tonight? Theodore watched Zara's face crumple, a wave of despair washing over her features as she weighed an impossible choice. A Sophie's choice that no mother should ever have to face. Betray the man she had allowed herself to fall in love with, destroy his life, or risk her daughter's safety, potentially condemning her to a life of fear and uncertainty, or worse. What exactly do you want me to say? Simple. You're going to tell Theodore that you've been lying to him from the beginning. You're going to tell him that you were paid to seduce him and gather information about his business operations. You're going to tell him that you never cared about him, and that he was just another mark in a long line of wealthy men you've conned. He'll never believe that. Oh, but he will, because you're going to be very convincing. You're going to break his heart so thoroughly that he'll never question your story, and then you're going to disappear forever, leaving him broken and ruined. Theodore realized with crystal clarity that this was Kevin's endgame, the culmination of his elaborate scheme. He didn't just want Theodore's restaurants. He wanted to destroy Theodore completely, to break his spirit, crush his ability to trust, and leave him so emotionally devastated that he would never recover enough to fight back. But Kevin had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated how much Zara cared about Theodore, how deep their connection ran, and the strength of her unwavering moral compass. I won't do it, Zara said firmly, her voice filled with steel. I won't destroy him for you, even if it means risking my daughter's life. Amelia is strong and smart, just like her mother. She'll survive whatever you do to us. But I won't be able to live with myself if I betray the first good man I've ever met. Theodore's heart soared, filled with a mixture of relief and profound admiration, even as he watched Kevin's face darken with rage. Then you've made your choice, Kevin sneered. Marcus, call our friends in Milwaukee. Tell them it's time for the little girl to have an accident. One of the men, the one who had struck Zara earlier, pulled out his phone, his fingers poised over the dial pad, ready to carry out Kevin's horrific order. But before he could dial, Theodore made his own choice, a decisive action that would alter the course of their lives forever. He stepped out from behind the supply rack, his phone held high, the camera still recording, capturing every detail of the scene unfolding before him. I wouldn't make that call if I were you. 3 guns were instantly pointed at him, their cold steel glinting in the harsh light. But Theodore kept his phone raised, his voice surprisingly calm despite the terror churning in his stomach. I've been recording everything for the past 10 minutes. Video and audio of you threatening Zara and her daughter. Clear footage of you holding her against her will. Evidence of your entire criminal conspiracy. That recording is automatically uploading to cloud storage as we speak, and it's being streamed live to a secure server. Kevin's eyes narrowed, his face contorted with fury. You're bluffing. Am I? Marcus, is it? Why don't you explain to the camera how you helped embezzle money from my restaurants? Or would you prefer to discuss your plans to harm a 6-year-old child? I'm sure the authorities would be very interested to hear your justification. Marcus lowered his phone without making the call, his face paling beneath his swarthy complexion. Here's what's going to happen, Theodore continued, surprised by how calm and authoritative his voice sounded. You're going to untie Zara right now. You're going to let both of us walk out of here unharmed, and then you're going to turn yourselves in to the federal investigators who are probably already on their way here. Federal investigators? Kevin laughed harshly, the sound devoid of humor. The only federal investigators involved in this case are the ones who are going to arrest you tomorrow morning for embezzlement. Actually, Kevin, that's where you're wrong. Theodore smiled grimly, a flicker of grim satisfaction playing across his lips. See, I never contacted federal investigators this week. I was planning to handle this situation through local law enforcement and internal corporate security. The federal investigation you're referring to, that was your mistake, not mine. Kevin's confident expression faltered slightly, the carefully constructed facade beginning to crack, revealing the fear and desperation that lay beneath. When you told me that federal agents would be arresting me tomorrow, you revealed that you'd initiated that investigation yourself, which means you've been planning this frame job for much longer than a few days, which means there's a paper trail of your criminal conspiracy going back weeks, maybe even months. Theodore saw understanding dawn in Kevin's eyes, followed quickly by a flash of panic. But here's the really beautiful part, Kevin. When I realized what you were doing, I contacted the real federal investigators. Agent Patricia Chun from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is very interested in your elaborate embezzlement and fraud scheme. She's also very interested in your kidnapping and extortion charges, not to mention your plans to hire a hitman to harm a child. You're lying. Am I? Agent Chun, would you like to introduce yourself? Theodore had been bluffing about the federal agents, a desperate gamble based on instinct and intuition, but his bold move paid off when Kevin and his accomplices spun around toward the loading dock entrance, their eyes darting nervously, searching for the phantom FBI agents. The sudden distraction gave Theodore the opportunity he needed. He lunged forward and grabbed the gun from the nearest man's waistband, his fingers closing around the cold steel with a surge of adrenaline. FBI! Everyone on the ground! He shouted in the most authoritative voice he could muster, hoping to project an image of control and command. In the confusion that followed, Theodore managed to untie Zara's hands while keeping the gun trained on Kevin and his men, his heart pounding in his chest, his hands shaking but his resolve unwavering. Zara was weak and disoriented, her movements sluggish, but she was conscious and able to stand with his help, her weight leaning heavily against him. "Can you walk?" he whispered to her, his voice filled with concern. "I think so," she replied, her voice hoarse but determined. "Amelia, we'll get her back. I promise," Theodore said, his voice thick with emotion. He kept the gun trained on the 3 men, holding them at bay, while he and Zara backed slowly toward the loading dock, their movements cautious and deliberate. "Don't move until we're gone," he ordered, his voice firm. "And Kevin, those federal agents I mentioned, they really are on their way. I called them from my car 20 minutes ago. It was another bluff, a calculated gamble designed to buy them time, but it was a convincing one, judging by the look of growing apprehension on Kevin's face. Theodore and Zara made it to his car without further incident, their escape a narrow victory snatched from the jaws of defeat. As soon as they were safely inside, Theodore started the engine and sped away from the restaurant, his tires squealing against the pavement. He immediately dialed 911, this time with a very different story to tell, a story filled with concrete details, tangible evidence, and the unwavering determination to bring these criminals to justice. 911, what's your emergency? This is Theodore Blackwood. I'm reporting a kidnapping and assault at O'Malley's Diner, 847 North Clark Street. 3 armed men are holding the restaurant manager hostage and have threatened to harm a child. We need police and paramedics immediately. As they sped through the early morning streets of Chicago, Theodore reached over and gently took Zara's hand, his fingers interlacing with hers, a silent gesture of comfort and reassurance. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. She squeezed his fingers weakly, her grip tentative but firm. I thought you believed Kevin's lies about me. The empty apartment, the fake evidence. I thought you'd given up on us." "Never," Theodore said firmly, his voice unwavering. "I may have doubted for a few minutes, but my heart knew the truth. What you and I have is real." He looked at her, his eyes filled with genuine emotion. "Zara, what happened between us this week? That wasn't acting or manipulation. That was two people finding each other when they needed it most. A connection forged in adversity and strengthened by shared values." "But how did you know to look for me at the restaurant?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. "Because I know you," Theodore replied, his voice soft but resolute. "I know the woman who would slip a note to a stranger to protect other employees, who would risk her own safety to expose corruption, who would refuse to betray someone she cared about, even under threat of death. That woman doesn't just disappear without a trace. That woman fights." Tears ran down Zara's bruised face, tracing clean paths through the grime and dried blood. "I was so scared, Theodore. Not just for myself, but for Amelia and for you. Kevin's been planning this for months, gathering fake evidence, building his case against you. Even if we expose him now, there might still be federal charges." "Let me worry about that," Theodore said, his voice reassuring. "Right now, we need to get you to a hospital and make sure Amelia is safe. That's all that matters." As they drove through the early morning streets of Chicago, Theodore realized that the choice he had made wasn't just about believing in Zara's innocence, although that was a crucial element. It was about choosing to believe in love itself, to trust that genuine connection and shared values could overcome even the most elaborate deception, to have faith in the power of human connection to triumph over darkness and despair. And for the first time since this nightmare had begun, he felt a flicker of hope, a fragile ember glowing in the darkness, fueled by the strength of his love for Zara and his unwavering determination to protect her and Amelia from the forces that threatened to destroy them. The first rays of dawn painted the Chicago skyline in shades of gold and amber as Theodore sat beside Zara's hospital bed, watching her sleep. The doctors at Northwestern Memorial had treated her injuries, a mild concussion, bruised ribs, and multiple contusions, but had insisted on keeping her for observation overnight, concerned about the possibility of internal bleeding. Theodore hadn't left her side, not even for a moment. He held her hand gently, careful not to disturb the four-line, and marveled at how peaceful she looked despite everything she had endured, the horrors she had witnessed, and the physical pain she was undoubtedly experiencing. The swelling around her left eye had gone down slightly. The angry purple bruises circling Zara's throat were already fading, morphing into a sickly yellowish green. Theodore's phone vibrated, a text from FBI agent Patricia Chun. "Kevin Murphy and associates in custody. All charges against you dropped. Need to debrief when Ms. Williams is feeling better. Excellent work, Mr. Blackwood." Theodore allowed himself a small smile. He quickly typed back, "Thank you, Agent Chun. Zara should be released this morning. We'll be available whenever you need us." The real Agent Chun, not the imposter from the diner, had arrived a mere 40 minutes after Theodore's frantic 911 call, leading a team of federal investigators and Chicago PD officers. The truth was, the FBI had been meticulously building a case against Kevin Murphy for months, painstakingly tracing his intricate web of embezzlement activities across a multitude of restaurant chains. Theodore's evidence, that damning note Zara had risked everything to deliver, had been the final, irrefutable piece they needed to trigger the arrests. But the sweetest victory, the one that truly mattered, had come 3 hours earlier. Confirmation from Milwaukee police that Amelia Williams was safe, sound, and blissfully unaware of the danger her mother had faced. Kevin's threats against the little girl, it turned out, had been nothing more than empty intimidation tactics. He had never actually dispatched anyone to Milwaukee. Zara stirred in the sterile hospital bed, her right eye fluttering open. "Theodore? I'm here," he said softly, gently squeezing her hand. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck. Driven by Kevin Murphy." She attempted a smile, but winced as the movement tugged painfully at her split lip. Please tell me this isn't all a dream. That bastard is really in jail? FBI custody, along with his 2 accomplices. Agent Chun says they found enough evidence to put Kevin away for 15 to 20 years. And Amelia is safe and sound in Milwaukee. I spoke to your mother an hour ago. She's bringing Amelia to Chicago this afternoon. Zara's eyes welled with tears of relief. Thank you for believing in me, for saving me, for everything. Theodore leaned forward, gently kissing her forehead. Thank you for being brave enough to slip me that note in the first place. Without your courage, Kevin would have destroyed dozens more lives. What happens now to your restaurants? Kevin did so much damage. The restaurants will recover. My accountants are already working closely with federal investigators to trace every dollar Kevin stole. The employees who were threatened or intimidated will receive generous compensation and counseling. And I'm implementing new, ironclad oversight procedures to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. And what about us? Zara asked quietly, her gaze searching his. When all this chaos settles down, when you go back to your penthouse in Manhattan and I go back to waiting tables. Actually, I've been thinking about that. Theodore reached into his jacket pocket, his heart pounding against his ribs, and pulled out a small, velvet box. I know this might seem fast, and I know we've only known each other for a week, but... Theodore, what are you doing? He opened the box, revealing a simple but undeniably elegant diamond ring, its facets catching the harsh hospital light. I'm asking you to marry me, Zara Williams. I'm asking you to be my partner, in life and in business. I'm asking you to help me rebuild, not just my restaurants, but my entire understanding of what it truly means to create something meaningful. Zara stared at the ring, then back up at Theodore's earnest face, her expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. Are you serious? After everything that's happened, all the lies and deception and danger, you want to get married? Because of everything that's happened? Because when the whole world seemed to be falling apart, you were the one thing I could count on. Because your courage and integrity showed me what I've been missing in my life. Because I love you, Zara, and I can't imagine facing another day without you. But I'm nobody special, Theodore. I'm a single mother with a GED and a history of bad choices. Your world, your friends, your business associates, they will learn to love you just like I do. And if they don't, then they're not the kind of people I want in my life anyway. Theodore carefully lifted the ring from the box, holding it out to her. I'm not asking you to become someone different, Zara. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are, but to be it with me forever. Zara looked at the ring for a long, silent moment, then met his eyes, her own brimming with unshed tears. What about Amelia? She's been through so much change already, and now, I love Amelia, too. From the moment I met her, I could see where you get your strength and intelligence. I want to be her stepfather, Zara. I want to give her every opportunity in the world, but more than that, I want to be the kind of man she can look up to. Theodore. Zara's voice was barely a whisper, soft with wonder. Are you sure? Really, truly sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Zara slowly held out her left hand, tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. Then, yes, I'll marry you, Theodore Blackwood. Theodore slipped the ring onto her finger, and even in the unforgiving fluorescent lighting of the sterile hospital room, it sparkled like captured starlight. He leaned down and kissed her gently, careful of her injuries, pouring all his love and the promise of their shared future into that simple, tender touch. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Agent Chun entered, followed by a small whirlwind of energy clad in a bright pink jacket and vibrant purple sneakers. Mommy! Amelia Williams launched herself toward the hospital bed, and Zara caught her daughter in a fierce hug, despite her sore ribs. Baby girl, I missed you so much. Are you okay? Did you have fun with Grandma Ruth? I'm fine, but Grandma said you were sick and had to stay in the hospital. What happened to your face? Zara glanced at Theodore, who nodded encouragingly. Mommy had an accident at work, sweetheart. But I'm going to be fine, and some very nice police officers made sure the people who caused the accident can't hurt anyone else. Amelia studied her mother's bruised face with the serious, analytical expression of a 6-year-old trying to decipher adult complexities. Then she turned to Theodore with the same unwavering intensity. "Are you the nice man who helped my mommy?" "I am. And your mommy helped me, too. We helped each other." "Good. Mommy deserves someone who helps her." Amelia clambered onto the hospital bed and snuggled against Zara's uninjured side. "Grandma Ruth says you're rich and you have lots of restaurants." "That's right. Do you have mac and cheese at your restaurants?" Theodore laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "The best mac and cheese in Chicago. Would you like to try some sometime? Can I have it for lunch?" "Amelia," Zara started to gently correct her daughter's boldness. But Theodore held up a hand, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Actually, I think mac and cheese for lunch sounds perfect. But first, I have something important to ask you." He knelt beside the hospital bed, bringing himself down to Amelia's eye level. "Amelia, your mommy and I have fallen in love, and I've asked her to marry me." She said yes. Amelia's eyes widened, mirroring the sparkle of the diamond ring on her mother's finger. "You're going to be my new daddy, if that's okay with you. I know you already have a daddy somewhere, and I'm not trying to replace him, but I would love to be part of your family, if you'll have me." Amelia looked back and forth between Theodore and her mother, her little mind clearly processing this momentous information. "Will we get to live in a big house?" "A very big house," Theodore confirmed, his voice full of tenderness. "With your own room and a yard to play in, and anything else you want." "Can I have a dog?" Zara started to protest, anticipating the chaos a puppy would undoubtedly bring, but Theodore nodded solemnly. "I think every little girl should have a dog. What kind would you like?" "A golden retriever, like the one in the movie." "Then a golden retriever it is." Amelia threw her arms around Theodore's neck with the uninhibited affection that only children possess. "I like you, Mr. Theodore. You make my mommy smile, and you promise good things." Theodore hugged her back, his heart full to overflowing. "I like you, too, Amelia, and I promise to take very good care of both you and your mommy." Agent Chun cleared her throat gently, a slight smile playing on her lips. "I hate to interrupt this beautiful family moment, but I do need to complete my debrief with both Mr. Blackwood and Ms. Williams when you're feeling up to it." "Of course," Zara said, adjusting Amelia comfortably on her lap. "Theodore told me you've been investigating Kevin for months. We had our suspicions about financial irregularities at several restaurant chains, but Kevin was very careful about covering his tracks. It wasn't until we intercepted communications about his plan to frame Mr. Blackwood that we realized the true scope of his operation." "Communications?" Theodore asked, intrigued. Kevin was working with a network of corrupt managers across the Midwest. They would identify wealthy restaurant owners, embezzle funds while building false evidence against their targets, then either blackmail the owners or force them to sell their businesses at below-market prices. "How many other people did he destroy?" Zara asked quietly, her voice laced with pain. "At least 8 restaurant owners over the past 3 years. Some lost everything. Their businesses, their savings, their reputations. One man in Detroit took his own life rather than face the shame of criminal charges he didn't deserve." The room fell silent, the full weight of Kevin's cruelty settling heavily over them. "But thanks to your evidence and Mr. Blackwood's quick thinking, we were able to arrest the entire network. Kevin's victims will finally have their names cleared, and several will receive significant financial restitution." "What about the employees who were threatened?" Theodore asked, his concern etched on his face. "The people Kevin intimidated into silence? All charges against them have been dropped, and we're providing witness protection services for anyone who feels unsafe. Your company's offer to pay for counseling and relocation assistance has been very helpful." Agent Chun closed her notebook, a sense of closure evident in her expression. "I think that covers everything for now. Ms. Williams, take care of yourself. And Mr. Blackwood, the FBI owes you a debt of gratitude. Your courage probably saved dozens of lives." After Agent Chun left, the small, newly formed family sat together in comfortable silence, Amelia having fallen asleep against her mother's side. Exhausted by the morning's whirlwind of emotions, Zara stroked her daughter's hair with one hand while Theodore held the other, his thumb gently caressing her knuckles. "I can't believe this is real," Zara whispered, her voice filled with awe. "A week ago, I was struggling to pay rent and worried about keeping my job. Now you're engaged to a billionaire and planning your new life as a restaurant empire." "Aries restaurant empire," Theodore corrected with a gentle smile. "Now I'm planning my new life with the man I love and our daughter. The money and the restaurants are wonderful, but that's not what matters. What matters? That you chose to trust me, that you were willing to risk everything to save me, that you see Amelia and me as a family worth fighting for." Zara lifted their joined hands and kissed his knuckles, her eyes shining with love and gratitude. "I love you, Theodore Blackwood, not because you're rich or successful, but because you're good, because you have integrity, because you make me believe in happily ever after." 6 months later, on Saturday, April 20th, 2024, the renovated O'Malley's Diner buzzed with excitement as guests arrived for the wedding reception. Theodore and Zara had exchanged vows that morning in a small, intimate ceremony at Lincoln Park Zoo, surrounded by close friends and family. But they had both insisted on holding their reception at the diner, the humble restaurant where their extraordinary love story had begun, now transformed into a shining example of ethical business practices and unwavering employee welfare. The old diner had been completely renovated, boasting bright, welcoming spaces with comfortable seating, an open kitchen concept that allowed diners to watch their meals being lovingly prepared, and a dedicated, colorful play area for families with children. But more importantly, it had become a beacon, a model for fair employment practices that rippled throughout Theodore's entire restaurant empire. Every employee now received comprehensive health insurance, generous paid vacation time, and profit-sharing bonuses. There was an anonymous reporting system for workplace problems, regular visits from independent oversight committees, and a strict, zero-tolerance policy for any form of intimidation or abuse. Employee satisfaction ratings had skyrocketed, and remarkably, the restaurant's profits had actually increased as word spread about their ethical practices and commitment to their staff. Zara, radiant in a flowing white dress with subtle silver embroidery that shimmered in the soft lighting, moved gracefully through the reception, warmly greeting guests with genuine affection. Her new role as Director of Employee Relations for the Blackwood Hospitality Group had given her a platform to implement the sweeping changes she'd only dreamed about as a struggling waitress, fighting to make ends meet. She had also enrolled in night classes at Northwestern University, diligently working toward her business degree while managing her demanding new responsibilities. "Mrs. Blackwood." Amelia came running up in her flower girl dress, a whimsical confection of pink tulle that she had insisted on wearing with her beloved, bright purple sneakers. "Carlos wants to know if I can help serve cake to the tables." Carlos Martinez, the newly appointed manager of the completely renovated restaurant, had been personally trained by Theodore and Zara, handpicked for his exceptional qualities. He was precisely the kind of empathetic and dedicated leader they wanted representing their company. Fair, compassionate, and genuinely invested in his employees' well-being. "I think that's a wonderful idea, sweetheart," Zara said, beaming with pride. "But be careful not to get frosting on your dress." Amelia nodded seriously, her brow furrowed in concentration, and skipped back toward the kitchen, where she'd become an honorary member of the staff, eagerly assisting during their frequent visits to the restaurant. Theodore appeared at Zara's side, his presence a reassuring and comforting weight, handsome and undeniably dashing in his impeccably tailored charcoal gray suit. "How does it feel, Mrs. Blackwood?" "Strange, wonderful. Like I'm living in someone else's fairy tale," she confessed, leaning against his shoulder, the scent of his cologne filling her senses. "I keep waiting to wake up." "Well, if this is a dream, I certainly don't want to wake up either," Theodore replied, his voice soft with affection. He leaned down and kissed the top of her head, his touch gentle and possessive. "Have I mentioned today that I love you?" Zara laughed, the sound light and melodic. "Only about 50 times since we woke up this morning." "Then I'm behind schedule," he teased, a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. "I love you, Zara Blackwood. I love our daughter, our life, our future together." "I love you too, Theodore," more than I ever thought possible. Their tender moment was interrupted by the unmistakable sound of clinking glasses. Jennifer Martinez, Theodore's efficient and ever-reliable assistant, and now Zara's good friend and confidant, was calling for attention, her voice clear and confident. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. The bride and groom would like to say a few words." Theodore and Zara moved to the center of the restaurant, their hands clasped tightly together. Their guests gathered around them in a warm, supportive circle of smiling faces and loving eyes. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Theodore began, his voice filled with emotion. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be getting married in a diner in Chicago, I would have thought they were completely crazy. I was so focused on profit margins and quarterly reports, so consumed by the bottom line, that I'd completely forgotten what the restaurant business was really about. Bringing people together, creating community, taking care of each other. He turned to Zara, his gaze filled with such profound tenderness and adoration that several guests instinctively dabbed at their eyes, overwhelmed by the raw emotion of the moment. "My wife taught me that the most important ingredient in any recipe is love. Love for your craft, love for your customers, and most importantly, love for the people who work alongside you every single day." Zara took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his, drawing strength and comfort from his touch. "When I slipped that note under Theodore's coffee cup 7 months ago, I was terrified. I knew I was risking my job, my safety, maybe even my daughter's well-being. But I also knew that staying silent would mean watching good people continue to get hurt by corruption and greed." Her voice grew stronger, resonating with conviction and passion. "What I didn't know was that speaking up would change my entire life, that it would lead me to love, to partnership, to a future I never dared to even dream about." She looked around at the renovated restaurant, her eyes sweeping over the employees who had become like family, and the guests who had supported them through their tumultuous journey. "This place represents everything we believe in: honest work, fair treatment, and the undeniable power of people to create something truly beautiful together. So tonight, we want to make an announcement," Theodore added, his voice ringing with excitement. "Effective immediately, every employee in the Blackwood Hospitality Group will receive stock options in the company, because the people who make our restaurants successful deserve to share in that success." The applause was thunderous, erupting from every corner of the room. Several employees openly wiped away tears of joy and gratitude, and Theodore saw Carlos, his face flushed with emotion, exchange a heartfelt hug with his wife. The presenter's voice boomed, filled with warmth. "Folks, what an incredible transformation. From a simple note slipped under a coffee cup to a love story that changed an entire business empire. Theodore and Zara have proven that courage and integrity can overcome any obstacle, and that true love really can conquer all. What lesson from their journey resonates most with you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories of love conquering adversity. And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who believes in the power of second chances." As the evening wound down and the guests began to depart, their hearts full of joy and inspiration, Theodore and Zara found themselves alone in the restaurant where their extraordinary adventure had all begun. Amelia had finally succumbed to exhaustion and had fallen asleep in one of the corner booths, her flower girl dress crumpled around her. Carlos, ever thoughtful, had draped a clean tablecloth over her like a makeshift blanket, ensuring she was warm and comfortable. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't recognized me that first day?" Theodore asked, gently pulling Zara into his arms for a slow, intimate dance to the soft jazz music playing on the restaurant's sound system. "I think we would have found each other eventually," Zara replied, resting her head contentedly against his chest, her voice soft and certain. "Maybe not here, maybe not under these specific circumstances, but somehow, the universe has a way of bringing together people who are meant to be together." "Meant to be together," Theodore repeated thoughtfully, a contented smile spreading across his face. "I like the sound of that." They swayed together in the gentle, romantic light of the restaurant, surrounded by the lingering echoes of laughter and celebration, holding their sleeping daughter and their boundless future safely within their hearts. Outside, The glittering Chicago skyline shimmered with endless possibility, and Lake Michigan reflected the twinkling stars like scattered diamonds on a dark velvet canvas. The vibrant city that had brought them together continued its ancient rhythm of dreams and determination, love and loss, second chances and new beginnings. The final voice echoed, sincere and heartfelt. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed the story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.